A legendary golden city believed to hold the greatest treasure in South America vanished without leaving a single trace. An ancient tomb containing 6 women arranged around a mysterious cauldron has sparked years of debate among archaeologists. A remarkably well-preserved ceremonial chariot was pulled from layers of volcanic ash after nearly 2,000 years. And beneath the foundations of ordinary homes, under dense forests, and beneath seemingly unremarkable fields, countless ancient human remains have been quietly telling stories that humanity had never known. Together, these discoveries prove that the past has not become any clearer. On the contrary, every new discovery seems to reveal even more mysteries. Some discoveries have forced the world to rewrite history. Some artifacts have overturned long-held scientific theories. And some questions remain unanswered to this day, despite humanity possessing the most advanced technology ever created. Hello everyone! Welcome to Ancient History, the channel where we uncover mysteries buried by time and explore some of the most extraordinary stories ever recorded in human history. Today, we're embarking on a remarkable journey in which every discovery serves as a doorway into the distant past. You'll meet a Maya queen whose teeth were inlaid with rare jade gemstones, explore a 1,700-year-old cemetery that was accidentally discovered beneath the basement of a home in France, follow the trail of a 1,500-year-old nobleman's tomb featuring an unusual burial ritual that has never been fully explained, and learn about 9 prehistoric human skeletons recently excavated in Nghệ An province, Vietnam, revealing how people lived there as far back as 6,000 years ago. Then, by the end of the video, we'll venture deep into the Amazon rainforest in search of the legendary lost city of Paititi, discover the fossil of a giant spider that lived tens of millions of years ago, and witness a nearly perfectly preserved Roman ceremonial chariot that survived the catastrophic eruption which destroyed the ancient city of Pompeii. And believe me, every discovery featured in today's video is the result of archaeological excavations carried out in recent years. Every artifact represents a forgotten piece of humanity's memory, awakened after lying hidden in darkness for thousands of years. But what makes these discoveries truly extraordinary isn't simply their age or their archaeological significance. It's the mysteries that continue to surround them. Because sometimes, a discovery doesn't bring the past to a close. It opens the door to more questions than ever before. So, are you ready to join me on this incredible journey? If you are, let's get started right now. 1,200-year-old hanging coffins, suspended on a 330-foot cliff, continue to challenge Chinese archaeologists. On the face of a nearly 330-foot-high vertical cliff, where even today reaching it requires climbing ropes, specialized equipment, and the skills of experienced mountaineers, hundreds of wooden coffins have remained silently suspended for more than 1,200 years. There were no cranes, no modern machinery, and certainly none of the advanced construction technology we have today. Yet somehow, the people of the past managed to transport wooden coffins weighing hundreds of pounds up the sheer cliff face and secure them there for centuries. If someone told you that, would you believe it? It's hard to imagine, isn't it? Simply picturing the feat raises countless questions. How did they accomplish it? Why didn't they bury their dead beneath the ground like so many other ancient civilizations? Instead, why suspend their coffins high above the earth? And what secrets might these mysterious hanging coffins still be hiding? As incredible as it sounds, this is a real archaeological mystery found in China. The story began on December 15th, when Chinese archaeologists announced the results of their survey of Xiandong Cave, located in Yanglinqiao Village, Zigui County, western Hubei Province, China. According to the research team, they discovered 131 hanging coffins suspended along the cliffs of Xiandong Cave, a name given by local residents to a complex of man-made caves. The entire site stretches for more than 165 feet, with towering cliffs rising approximately 330 feet, creating a landscape that is both breathtaking and deeply mysterious. Looking up from the base of the mountain, the small wooden coffins appear to cling to the middle of the cliff, leaving anyone who sees them asking the same question. How could people more than 1,000 years ago possibly have placed them in such an inaccessible location? Based on their initial findings, archaeologists estimate that the coffins are approximately 1,200 years old, dating back to the Tang dynasty. They are believed to belong to the Bo people, an ethnic minority group that once lived in southern China. For them, suspending coffins on cliffs was far more than a method of burial. It was a deeply spiritual ritual. According to their beliefs, the higher a coffin was placed, the closer the deceased's soul would be to heaven. At the same time, placing the coffin high on a cliff protected the body from wild animals and the harsh conditions found on the ground below. They believed this unique burial practice would bring peace to the deceased and bless their spirits for eternity. That belief gave rise to one of the most remarkable and mysterious burial traditions in Chinese history. However, what has puzzled archaeologists for decades is not the meaning behind the ritual, but how it was actually carried out. Think about it. More than 1,000 years ago, long before steel scaffolding, heavy lifting equipment, or helicopters existed, how could people have transported massive wooden coffins, along with burial offerings, dozens of feet up nearly vertical cliffs? Even today, despite numerous theories, including the use of elaborate wooden scaffolding, rope systems, or mountain paths that have long since disappeared, no explanation has been able to fully convince researchers. For that reason, the hanging coffins of Shandong Cave have long been regarded as an invaluable cultural treasure and one of China's greatest archaeological mysteries. Each coffin is not only the final resting place of someone who lived more than a millennium ago, but also a lasting testament to the engineering skills, spiritual beliefs, and way of thinking of an ancient culture. Unfortunately, not all of these hanging coffins have survived intact. During the 1960s and 1970s, when economic conditions were especially difficult, some local residents dismantled a number of the wooden coffins and used the wood as firewood. That unfortunate decision resulted in the permanent loss of countless priceless historical treasures. Many artifacts and archaeological clues disappeared before scientists ever had the opportunity to study them. Recognizing the importance of the site, Yu Bo, head of the Zigui County Cultural Relics Administration, said that local authorities have officially placed the entire Shandong Cave hanging coffin complex under cultural heritage protection. Restoration and conservation projects have also been launched to prevent further deterioration over time. Today, more than 1,200 years later, the 131 hanging coffins still cling silently to the towering cliffs, standing as quiet witnesses to history. They tell not only the story of one of the world's most unusual burial traditions, but also pose a question that modern science has yet to answer completely. How did people over 1,000 years ago accomplish something that still seems almost impossible today? Do you have a theory? If you do, don't hesitate to share it in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think. Idiot. The tomb of a Maya queen with jade-covered teeth was accidentally discovered beneath the ground in Mexico. My friend, would you believe that one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the century didn't begin with a treasure hunt, but with plans to build a restroom? It sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? Yet that's exactly what happened in 2024 at the archaeological site of Palenque in Chiapas, southern Mexico. As many of you know, Palenque was once one of the most powerful centers of the legendary Maya civilization. It was here that archaeologists unexpectedly uncovered a secret that had remained buried beneath the earth for centuries. And what they discovered not only left the excavation team speechless, it also captured the attention of archaeologists around the world. The story began when specialists from the Chiapas branch of Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History, INAH, were surveying the area to determine the best location for a new restroom for visitors. During the survey, they unexpectedly uncovered a stone structure buried about 6 feet beneath the surface. At first, no one knew exactly what they had found, but as they carefully removed layer after layer of soil, they realized they were looking at an ancient tomb that had survived in an almost perfectly preserved condition and was at least several hundred years old. Even the archaeologists themselves probably never imagined that what seemed like an ordinary site survey would open the door to a mystery that had never been recorded in history. Of course, what makes this tomb extraordinary isn't simply its age. According to the researchers, the person buried inside is what makes the discovery truly remarkable. The tomb contained the remains of a woman laid on her side in accordance with traditional Maya burial customs. Surrounding her were numerous burial offerings crafted from jade and other rare precious stones. The sheer quantity and exceptional quality of these artifacts were enough to convince experts that this woman must have held an extremely high social status within ancient Maya society. But do you know what astonished the research team the most? It was her teeth. While cleaning the skull, specialists discovered that several of her teeth had been carefully modified and decorated with jade. Unlike modern dental crowns, the ancient Maya used one of the world's most valuable gemstones to adorn their teeth. This wasn't merely a cosmetic practice, it was a powerful symbol of wealth, authority, and social prestige. This exceptionally rare detail has led many experts to believe that the woman may have been a Maya queen, or at the very least, a member of the highest ranks of Maya nobility. The mysteries don't end there. The location of the tomb is equally intriguing. The burial chamber was carefully constructed and situated beside the remains of an ancient gemstone workshop. Archaeologists also uncovered countless pottery fragments and tools used for crafting precious stones throughout the surrounding area. These discoveries have raised a series of fascinating questions. Could this noblewoman have been the owner of the workshop? Or was she a royal patron who supported the skilled artisans responsible for creating jewelry exclusively for the Maya elite? Unfortunately, these ideas remain only theories. So far, no evidence has been found that definitively links the tomb to the mysterious workshop. Another fascinating aspect of the discovery is that the excavation was led by Arnoldo González Cruz, one of INA's most renowned archaeologists. If you followed some of the most important discoveries related to the Maya civilization, you may recognize his name. In 1994, he led the team that uncovered the legendary tomb of the Red Queen at Palenque. The woman buried there was laid to rest with an extraordinary collection of treasures, including jade, pearls, seashells, and finely crafted bone artifacts. She wore an exquisitely crafted breastplate made of jade and cat's eye gemstones. A jade headdress crowned her head, and her entire body had been covered in brilliant red cinnabar powder. Because of these remarkable burial features, archaeologists gave her the name the Red Queen. Researchers believe she died sometime between AD 600 and 700. Compared with the Red Queen's magnificent tomb, this newly discovered burial is somewhat simpler and dates to a few centuries later, during the pre-Hispanic period. Even so, the valuable grave goods buried alongside the woman clearly demonstrate that she lived a life of great wealth and held a position of exceptional importance within Maya society. Unfortunately, to this day, archaeologists have not found a single inscription or historical record capable of revealing her true identity. Could she have been a Maya queen whose name was never recorded in history? Or are even greater secrets still waiting to be uncovered beneath the ancient city of Palenque? Perhaps only future excavations will provide the answers. Until then, the only thing we can do is wait. 1,700-year-old cemetery buried beneath the ground near Paris was discovered during a basement renovation. Just imagine this for a moment. One day, while renovating your home, you swing your shovel into the ground, and after only a few digs, a human skeleton suddenly appears beneath the floor. How do you think you would react? Most people would probably panic and stop working immediately, wouldn't they? Why do I ask? Because that's exactly what happened to a homeowner in 2024 in the Montconseil district of Corbeil-Essonnes, a suburb just south of Paris, France. While renovating the basement of his home, he accidentally uncovered the entrance to an ancient cemetery that had remained forgotten for nearly 2,000 years. Hidden beneath the ground were dozens of graves dating from the Roman era all the way through the Middle Ages. Pretty incredible, isn't it? The discovery began in the simplest way imaginable. While remodeling his basement, the homeowner unexpectedly uncovered a human skeleton buried beneath the soil. Realizing it could be an important archaeological site, he immediately notified local authorities. Only a few days later, archaeologists arrived to begin an excavation. And the deeper they dug, the more they realized they were standing on something far more significant than anyone had expected. What began with a single skeleton quickly expanded into the discovery of 38 ancient graves, transforming an ordinary basement into an ancient cemetery that had been used continuously for roughly 700 years. What astonished experts most was the age of the burials. After their initial investigation, archaeologists determined that the oldest grave dated back to the 3rd century AD, about 1,700 years ago, when the Roman Empire still ruled the region. Among the discoveries were also 10 coffins from the early Frankish period, dating from approximately AD 476 to 750. Even more remarkable, the most recent grave dates to the 10th century, indicating that this cemetery remained in use for nearly 7 centuries. That fact alone is enough to make historians reconsider the early history of this region. Before the excavation, archaeologists had believed the site was simply a medieval cemetery. That theory seemed reasonable because historical records mention a chapel that was built here during the 7th century. So when graves hundreds of years older than the chapel began to emerge, the research team could hardly hide their surprise. They expanded the excavation to an area of about 560 square feet, roughly the size of 4 average rooms, and each new layer of soil revealed another fascinating discovery. What's even more intriguing is that archaeologists had previously uncovered several medieval graves in this area, yet they had never found clear evidence of the church or chapel described in historical documents. The house being renovated is believed to stand on the site of the medieval Notre Dame des Champs church. However, the new discoveries suggest a very different story. It is now possible that an ancient pagan temple once stood here before the church was built. Over time, the site may have been transformed into a cemetery and later became the location of the medieval chapel. If that theory is correct, this small piece of land witnessed multiple chapters of history unfolding over the course of thousands of years. It wasn't just the age of the graves that fascinated archaeologists. The burial practices also revealed valuable information. Most of the graves were arranged neatly in parallel rows. Individuals from the Roman period were buried in wooden coffins, although most of the wood had long since decayed. Meanwhile, the 10 individuals from the Merovingian Frankish period were buried in distinctive plaster coffins arranged in a fan-shaped pattern, a rare style of burial. What's particularly interesting is that Merovingian coffins found elsewhere are often decorated with elaborate carvings, and in some cases, multiple individuals were buried together in a single coffin. At this cemetery, however, nearly all of the coffins were plain, without decorative carvings, and each contained only a single individual. The age of the oldest graves clearly demonstrates that this site had already served as a burial ground long before the medieval chapel was ever constructed. Once the excavation was completed, all of the human remains were transferred to a laboratory for further analysis. Experts will study the age, sex, health, diet, and living conditions of the individuals buried here in order to reconstruct a clearer picture of the region's history south of Paris. It is entirely possible that these silent skeletons, resting undisturbed for nearly 1,700 years, may finally provide the answers to historical mysteries that have remained unsolved for centuries. And if that turns out to be true, it would be an extraordinary discovery indeed. 1,500-year-old nobleman's tomb with 6 women buried alongside him reveals a chilling secret of ancient Europe. Have you ever wondered what happened when a powerful noble died about 1,500 years ago? Was the funeral simply a ceremony to honor the deceased, or were their burial rituals so unsettling that they would still send chills down our spines today? If you've ever asked yourself those questions but never found an answer, then come with me to Saxony-Anhalt in eastern Germany, where an ordinary construction project unexpectedly uncovered one of the most haunting secrets of ancient Europe. The story began in 2023, when workers were preparing land for the construction of a poultry farm. While clearing the site, they noticed unusual traces beneath the ground. At the time, no one could have imagined that only a few days later, the site would become the focus of archaeologists across Europe after one of Germany's most significant archaeological discoveries in more than 40 years came to light. As archaeologists carefully removed layer after layer of soil, an enormous burial site gradually emerged before them. After conducting their initial analysis, researchers concluded that the tomb most likely belonged to a person of exceptionally high status who had lived during the migration period, the turbulent era that followed the gradual collapse of the Roman Empire. Simply judging by the size of the burial complex and the wealth of grave goods, experts immediately knew this was no ordinary burial. In fact, every new discovery made the atmosphere at the excavation even more tense and exciting. At the very center of the tomb, archaeologists uncovered a large bronze cauldron. What made it particularly unusual was that it contained no gold, silver, or precious jewels, as many might expect. Instead, researchers believe the cauldron may once have held the cremated remains of the noble buried there. However, the actual remains of this powerful individual have still not been found. Archaeologist Suzanne Friederich from the State Museum of Prehistory in Halle explained that the research team is continuing its search for the missing remains in hopes of determining the true identity of the individual buried in this mysterious tomb. But do you know what truly stunned archaeologists? It was what surrounded the bronze cauldron. Arranged in a circle around it were the skeletal remains of 6 women. The discovery immediately sparked a wave of disturbing theories. Many researchers believe these women may have been the nobleman's wives or concubines. Yet the biggest question remains unanswered. Were they sacrificed and buried alongside the noble as part of a funerary ritual? Or did they willingly follow him in death out of loyalty or religious devotion? More than 1,000 years later, those silent skeletons still cannot reveal what truly happened on the day of that ancient funeral. The discoveries didn't stop there. Inside the tomb, archaeologists also uncovered the remains of 11 animals, including large livestock, dogs, and horses. In many ancient cultures, burying animals with the deceased was a clear sign of extraordinary wealth, power, and social status. These animals were considered valuable possessions as well as loyal companions who would continue serving their owner in the afterlife. Their presence further strengthens the conclusion that this tomb belonged to a nobleman or another highly influential leader. The excavation became even more fascinating as researchers expanded their investigation beyond the main burial. Not far from the central tomb, they discovered 60 additional graves. Preliminary studies indicate that the entire cemetery was in use between approximately AD 480 and 530. This was one of the most turbulent periods in European history, following the collapse of the Roman Empire, when numerous Germanic tribes, including the Huns, spread into territories once controlled by Rome. Because of this, the cemetery represents an invaluable source of information for historians seeking to better understand this dramatic period of transition in European history. The artifacts recovered from the graves have also amazed researchers. Among them were an exquisitely crafted glass bowl, numerous gold-plated ornaments that had once decorated the clothing of the deceased, a sword, an iron shield, a gold coin bearing the portrait of Emperor Zeno, and many other valuable objects. Researchers were especially intrigued by the finely engraved glass artifacts. Their craftsmanship matches the distinctive techniques used by Gallo-Roman artisans who lived along the Rhine River. At that time, only these craftsmen were known to possess such advanced glassmaking skills. This suggests that the noble buried here was not only immensely wealthy, but also connected to extensive networks of trade, influence, and power that stretched across ancient Europe. Even today, many questions remain unanswered. Who was the true owner of this remarkable tomb? What really happened to the 6 women buried around the bronze cauldron? And why was such an extraordinary burial ritual performed? Perhaps only future excavations will allow us to piece together the missing parts of this remarkable story. But one thing is certain. A chance discovery beneath the site of a modern poultry farm has opened a doorway into one of the most mysterious and fascinating chapters of European history from 1,500 years ago. And that's what makes this discovery so extraordinary. 9 6,000-year-old prehistoric skeletons reveal the secrets of ancient coastal communities in Vietnam. The excavation followed a research project that began in mid-March 2024 through a collaboration between local cultural agencies, the University of Social Sciences and Humanities at Vietnam National University, Hanoi, and archaeologists from the Australian National University. From the very first days of the excavation, researchers suspected that this site might preserve extremely important evidence of prehistoric life, and their instincts proved correct. As each layer of soil was carefully removed, the discoveries exceeded everyone's expectations. Within just 2 excavation pits covering a combined area of about 194 square feet, archaeologists uncovered 9 prehistoric human skeletons buried approximately 10 feet beneath the surface. At first glance, that may not sound extraordinary, but what immediately caught the attention of archaeologists was the unusual way these individuals had been buried. The skeletons were spaced roughly 20 inches apart, and most had been placed in a flexed burial position with their knees drawn toward the chest, a burial practice commonly associated with prehistoric communities. Even more intriguing, several of the graves contained double burials, meaning 2 individuals had been laid to rest together. The rarest discovery of all was a burial containing 3 skeletons, stacked one above another, separated by only a very thin layer of soil. The graves were also covered with thick layers of mollusk shells, creating a scene that was both fascinating and mysterious. Just think about it. Why would people who lived thousands of years ago choose to bury their dead in this way? Was it part of a special spiritual ritual? Or were those buried together members of the same family or people who had shared close relationships during their lifetimes? Even today, scientists are still searching for answers to those questions. But the discoveries didn't stop with the human remains. The excavation also produced an impressive collection of artifacts. Among them were ornaments made from seashells and marine snail shells, along with stone and bone tools such as stone axes, stone flakes, grinding pestles, and the remains of ancient hearths. Each artifact represents another important piece of the puzzle, helping researchers reconstruct the lives of people who lived here thousands of years ago. Together, they show that these prehistoric communities not only knew how to manufacture tools, but also crafted jewelry, made extensive use of marine resources, and maintained a relatively stable way of life. According to the preliminary assessment by the Nghệ An Museum, the 9 skeletons most likely belong to the Quyen Van culture, a prehistoric culture that flourished in what is now Vietnam between approximately 4,000 and 6,000 years ago. However, to determine the precise age of the remains and better understand the origins of these ancient people, all of the skeletons and artifacts have been submitted for radiocarbon dating. Once the results are available, experts plan to recommend a much larger excavation to continue uncovering the secrets that still lie beneath the ground in Quyen Lu district. You may be wondering why the Quyen Van culture is so important to archaeologists. It represents a culture from the late Neolithic period that was primarily distributed across the coastal plains of today's Nghệ An and Ha Tinh provinces in Vietnam. Its archaeological sites are typically located on massive shell mounds measuring approximately 16 to 20 feet thick, situated roughly 0.6 to 6 miles from the coastline between low hills and the East Sea. This unique environment allowed prehistoric communities to develop a lifestyle closely connected to the sea, relying on hunting, gathering, and harvesting mollusks as major sources of food. Few people realize that the Quyen Van culture was first identified in 1930 by French scholars near Cao Giat in Quyen Lu district. Additional surveys and excavations carried out in 1963, 1976, and 1979 eventually identified 21 archaeological sites, most of them located within Quyen Lu district. Ancient hearths, burial sites, stone tools, bone artifacts, pottery fragments, and countless mollusk shells have gradually allowed researchers to reconstruct a vivid picture of life among Vietnam's ancient coastal inhabitants thousands of years ago. This latest discovery not only adds invaluable evidence to the field of Vietnamese archaeology, but also creates new opportunities to unlock long-standing mysteries about our ancestors. Who knows, beneath the seemingly ordinary soil of Nghệ An, hundreds, or perhaps even thousands, of additional archaeological remains may still be waiting to be discovered. And every skeleton brought to light serves as a silent message from the distant past, helping us better understand the long journey of human development on the land that is now Vietnam. What do you think about this remarkable discovery? Do you have your own theory or perspective? If so, don't hesitate to leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts and continue the discussion together. The lost golden city of Paititi, a legendary Inca city hidden deep within the Amazon rainforest. What would you think if I told you that somewhere deep within the dense rainforests of South America, an ancient city overflowing with gold could still exist, one that no one has been able to find for hundreds of years? A place said to have been so wealthy that its roads, temples, and treasures were all closely associated with gold. It sounds like the legend of El Dorado, doesn't it? But for many archaeologists and historians, the name that fascinates them even more is Paititi, the legendary golden city of the Inca Empire. What's even more intriguing is that after existing only in oral traditions for centuries, an unexpected discovery in 2009 near Boca do Acre in Amazonas reignited one of archaeology's greatest questions. Did the legendary city of Paititi truly exist, or is it nothing more than a myth woven together over time? To understand why Paititi has become one of South America's greatest archaeological mysteries, we need to travel back more than 500 years to one of the most turbulent periods in the history of the Inca Empire. At that time, Spanish conquistadors were pushing deeper into South America, determined to conquer new lands and seize the enormous treasures they had heard about. The fighting grew increasingly fierce, and after years of conflict, the Spanish gradually gained the upper hand. Their ultimate goal was to locate the wealthy cities of the Inca and claim their vast stores of gold and silver. According to legends passed down for centuries, one of their most important targets was Paititi, a city often described as the Inca's golden sanctuary. Stories claim that it contained immense quantities of pure gold, precious gemstones, and some of the greatest treasures of the entire empire. Yet something extraordinary supposedly happened when the Spanish finally reached the city. Instead of mountains of gold, they found a place that had been completely abandoned. There were no inhabitants, no warriors, and most puzzling of all, every piece of gold and every legendary treasure had vanished as though they had never existed. So how could an entire thriving city simply disappear without leaving a trace? According to researchers, many ancient accounts suggest that just before the Spanish arrived, the people of Paititi chose to abandon their homeland. They secretly migrated deep into the vast tropical rainforests of South America, an area believed by some traditions to lie within what is now southern Brazil. More importantly, they did not leave their treasures behind. Their gold, jewelry, sacred statues, and most valuable possessions were all said to have traveled with them during their journey into the wilderness. From that moment on, their new city was never found. Along with it, the immense treasure of the Inca disappeared from history, turning Paititi into one of the world's greatest enduring legends. Over the centuries, countless expeditions set out in search of the legendary Golden City. Some fought their way through the Amazon rainforest, others navigated dangerous rivers. Many lost their lives to disease, wild animals, or becoming hopelessly lost in the jungle. Yet every expedition returned empty-handed. Eventually, many scholars concluded that Paititi was nothing more than a legend invented by the Inca to mislead invading Spanish forces. But then an unexpected discovery forced researchers to reconsider that possibility. In 2009, scientists used satellite imagery to survey deforested areas near Boca do Acre. What they saw from above astonished the archaeological community. Beneath land that had been hidden by dense rainforest for centuries were unmistakable traces of human-made structures, carefully planned geometric earthworks, and compelling evidence that a very large community had once lived there. The discovery immediately generated enormous excitement among researchers. Could this have been the place where the people of Paititi relocated? Or was it simply one of many forgotten ancient cities still concealed beneath the Amazon rainforest? Of course, satellite images alone are not enough to prove that the legendary Golden City truly existed. However, the discoveries made in 2009 established one extremely important fact. The rainforests of South America were once home to urban settlements far larger and more sophisticated than modern researchers had previously imagined. That means the possibility that Paititi was a real place is no longer as far-fetched as it once seemed. Who knows, somewhere within the millions of acres of unexplored rainforest, an ancient city may still lie hidden, along with the countless tons of gold that, according to legend, the Inca carried with them during their escape more than 5 centuries ago. It's certainly possible, isn't it? After all, our world is still filled with mysteries, and sometimes the most unbelievable stories turn out to contain a grain of truth. 16-million-year-old giant spider fossil reveals a lost world that once existed. Imagine this for a moment. Tens of millions of years ago, you step into a forest, and instead of the small spiders we see today, you are face to face with a giant spider, many times larger than its modern relatives. How would that feel? Honestly, just thinking about it gives me chills. But here's the surprising truth. That creature didn't just exist in imagination. It actually crawled across the land of Australia between 11 and 16 million years ago. And it wasn't until 2023 that scientists were finally able to see what it looked like, thanks to a remarkable discovery at the McGrath's Flat fossil site in central New South Wales, Australia. This discovery not only thrilled paleontologists, but also opened new clues about a long-lost ecosystem that once existed in Oceania millions of years ago. What's fascinating is that McGrath's Flat has long been considered a true prehistoric treasure chest of Australia. The site is famous for preserving exceptionally well-preserved fossils of plants and animals from the Miocene epoch, which lasted from about 23 million to 5 million years ago. Because of its unique geological conditions, countless ancient organisms were preserved here for millions of years, allowing scientists to reconstruct a version of Australia that looked completely different from today. During research at this site, scientists unexpectedly discovered a spider fossil dating back 11 to 16 million years. At first glance, they immediately realized this was not an ordinary specimen. After detailed analysis, the team confirmed it was the largest spider fossil ever found in Australia. Even more importantly, it became the first fossil in the world belonging to the Barichellidae family of spiders ever discovered. These two facts alone make it one of the most significant discoveries in the study of ancient spiders. But do you know what surprised scientists even more? The fossil's body structure closely resembles modern trapdoor spiders that still exist today. However, its size was about 5 times larger than its modern relatives. This suggests that millions of years ago, Australia had an environment rich enough and stable enough to support much larger spider species than those found today. According to Dr. Matthew McCurry, one of the researchers involved in the study, this discovery holds major scientific importance. Previously, only 4 spider fossils had been found across the entire Australian continent. Such a small number made it extremely difficult to study the evolutionary history of these creatures. This new fossil not only fills a crucial missing link, but also helps scientists better understand spider evolution and the possible reasons behind the extinction of many ancient species in Oceania. What makes it even more interesting is that when compared to living species today, the closest relatives of this ancient spider are now found only in humid tropical rainforests stretching from Singapore to Papua New Guinea. This reveals a remarkable truth. Millions of years ago, much of Australia may have been covered in lush, humid forests, similar to today's Southeast Asian rainforests. But over time, as the continent became increasingly dry, dramatic environmental changes likely caused this giant spider and many other species to disappear forever. To study this rare fossil in detail, scientists used electron microscopes to examine microscopic structures invisible to the human eye. Thanks to this advanced technology, they were able to clearly observe the spider's fangs, stiff hairs on its legs, feet, and body. These tiny hairs may look simple, but they serve extremely important functions. They help spiders detect the smallest vibrations in their environment, sense chemical signals, defend against predators, and in some species, even produce sound for communication or warning signals. As you can see, from a single fossil buried underground for millions of years, scientists have been able to reconstruct an entire ancient world, its climate, ecosystems, and the creatures that once dominated Australia. Every detail preserved in this fossil is like a page from nature's diary, waiting millions of years to be read. And perhaps somewhere beneath the ancient rocks of McGrath's Flat, or in another undiscovered place on Earth, many more extraordinary fossils are still waiting silently to be found, ready to tell us more stories about the world before humans ever existed. What do you think? Nearly intact, 2,000-year-old ceremonial chariot reveals the secrets of the Roman Empire. Have you ever wondered what life in the Roman world would have looked like if we could travel back nearly 2,000 years to just before the moment the city of Pompeii was wiped out by a volcanic eruption? Busy streets, luxurious villas, and grand ceremonies of the Roman elite would likely unfold right before our eyes. What's truly astonishing is that although the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in AD 79 buried an entire city under thick layers of ash, that same ash ironically became a massive time capsule, preserving countless priceless artifacts for nearly 2 millennia. And in February 2021, during an excavation at an ancient Roman villa in Civita Giuliana, located about 2,300 feet from Pompeii in southern Italy, archaeologists made a discovery that stunned the world. A nearly perfectly preserved ancient ceremonial chariot emerged from the ground, carrying secrets about Roman life that had never been seen before. This discovery was not part of a treasure hunt or a search for famous artifacts. Originally, the excavation project had a very practical goal: to protect the ancient villa from illegal looters who were continuously breaking into the site. It was during the expansion of excavations in the villa's stable area that archaeologists noticed unusual signs beneath the volcanic layers. As soil and debris were carefully removed layer by layer, the shape of an ancient vehicle gradually began to appear. At that moment, the research team realized they were standing before something extraordinary. Before their eyes was a four-wheeled chariot crafted from iron, bronze, and tin, still preserved in astonishing condition after nearly 2,000 years underground. Although its wooden components had long since decayed, the volcanic ash that covered it after the eruption in AD 79 helped preserve most of its structure almost perfectly. Experts were deeply surprised, as it is extremely rare for composite artifacts like this to survive in such remarkable condition for such a long period of time. But what makes this chariot truly special is not only its state of preservation, it is its historical significance. According to researchers, this is a one-of-a-kind discovery in Italy and the first ceremonial chariot ever found in the Pompeii region. Unlike carts used for transporting goods or for warfare, this vehicle was specifically designed for ceremonial processions and elite Roman rituals. This alone opens an entirely new direction of research into the formal traditions and ceremonial practices of ancient Roman society. After the discovery, the team immediately launched emergency conservation efforts. Every remaining fragment of wood and every metal component had to be carefully stabilized and treated to prevent damage during excavation. This was an extremely delicate process, as even the smallest mistake could destroy materials that had survived nearly 2 millennia. One of the most fascinating details is the decoration on the rear of the chariot. There, archaeologists found engraved medallions depicting Cupid, the famous Roman god of love. These intricate carvings not only demonstrate the extraordinary craftsmanship of ancient artisans, but also offer clues about the chariot's original purpose. According to Massimo Ossana, then Director General of the Pompeii Archaeological Park, this chariot was likely used to transport brides and grooms during elite Roman wedding ceremonies, or to take part in important religious and festival processions. If this theory is correct, it would represent one of the rarest pieces of evidence allowing modern people to better understand Roman wedding rituals nearly 2,000 years ago. As you can see, even a single artifact unearthed from the ground can tell the story of an entire civilization that once flourished. What's even more remarkable is that today, only about 2/3 of Pompeii has been excavated. Despite archaeological work beginning as early as the 16th century, this means that hundreds of structures, thousands of artifacts, and countless secrets are still buried beneath the volcanic ash of Vesuvius, waiting to be discovered. Perhaps that is why Pompeii is still considered one of the greatest time machines in the world. 1,300-year-old mummy found inside a fabric cocoon in Siberia. Have you ever wondered how a human body could remain undisturbed for more than 1,300 years in the unforgiving frozen wilderness of Siberia and still be preserved so remarkably well that it left scientists astonished? And what if that mummy was discovered alongside the remains of an infant only about 6 months old, with both bodies wrapped in mysterious materials unlike anything archaeologists had ever encountered? If you've ever asked yourself those questions but never found an answer, then let's travel back in time to early July 2015. It was during that time that scientists from Russia's Arctic Research Center were conducting excavations at the ancient Zheliny Yar burial ground in Siberia, near the edge of the Russian Arctic. There, they uncovered a remarkably preserved mummy dating back approximately 1,300 years. The body had been preserved using a method unlike anything previously documented, and this extraordinary discovery has helped answer many of the questions we just raised. According to the experts, the mummy belonged to an adult who was not buried in a wooden or stone coffin, as was common in many other ancient cultures. Instead, the body was carefully enclosed inside a cocoon made of multiple layers of thick fabric, covered with copper plates and animal fur. This discovery immediately captured the attention of archaeologists because of its highly unusual burial method, while also revealing the complex funeral rituals practiced by the ancient people who once lived in this harsh, frozen landscape. But here's what truly surprised the research team. It wasn't just the mummy itself, it was what lay beside it. Next to the adult's remains were the skeletal remains of an infant less than 6 months old, buried in the same orientation as the adult. According to the researchers, both bodies were positioned along a north-south axis, with their feet pointing toward the nearby Gorny Polui River. The adult's body was wrapped in large copper plates, while the infant had been placed inside the broken pieces of a copper cauldron, suggesting that each individual was buried according to a unique and carefully performed ritual. These seemingly minor details are now helping archaeologists piece together the story of a civilization that disappeared thousands of years ago. However, the mystery didn't end there. Alexander Gusev, a member of the research team, explained that both bodies had been enclosed within a cocoon made of thick fabric combined with a liquid extracted through the distillation of birch bark. Scientists believe this unique compound played a crucial role in preserving the bodies for more than a millennium. However, the exact composition of the embalming substance remains unknown and can only be determined through detailed laboratory analysis. Based on the cocoon's length of approximately 5 feet 7 inches, experts estimate that the adult inside stood about 5 feet 5 inches tall during life. They also suspect that the people buried at the site may have belonged to an ancient civilization with connections to Persia, opening up new theories about trade routes and cultural exchanges that existed more than 1,000 years ago. After the excavation was completed, the entire mummy was transported to a laboratory in Tyumen, Russia, where specialists continued their investigation to determine the individual's sex, age, and the species of animal whose fur had been used to keep the deceased warm during the journey into the afterlife. Perhaps the secrets hidden inside this extraordinary fabric cocoon are only the tip of the iceberg. Every new laboratory analysis has the potential to reshape what we know about a civilization that has remained silent for more than 1,300 years. 1,300-year-old tomb. Inside the Tiwanaku Pyramid, the royal treasure that escaped centuries of looting. Can you believe it if I told you that a tomb remained untouched for nearly 1,300 years, surviving countless wars, brutal raids by invading armies, and the relentless destruction of time? Yet when it was finally opened, it still contained dazzling gold treasures that left the entire archaeological community in awe. Even more astonishing, the person buried inside does not appear to have been an ordinary individual. He may have been a powerful king who once ruled over a vast empire, or perhaps a high-ranking priest entrusted with the sacred secrets of an ancient civilization. It may sound unbelievable, but this remarkable story is absolutely true. Everything began on May 2nd, when archaeologists started excavations at the Acapana Pyramid within the Tiwanaku Archaeological Site in western Bolivia. This site was once the heart of one of South America's most powerful civilizations, long before Europeans ever set foot on the continent. As researchers explored deeper into the ancient structure, they uncovered a mysterious tomb hidden inside the pyramid itself. Believe it or not, the tomb's location alone was enough to convince experts that the individual buried there must have held an extraordinarily high status. According to archaeologist Javier Escalante, who officially announced the discovery during a press conference held near the excavation site, the human remains were found inside a burial niche embedded deep within the pyramid's wall, which stands approximately 49 feet tall. What makes this discovery even more remarkable is that the massive Acapana Pyramid was built around 1200 BC and was once considered the largest architectural structure in the region during the pre-Columbian era. From the top of the pyramid, ancient inhabitants could overlook the entire city of Tiwanaku, which covered roughly 1.5 square miles and was once home to more than 100,000 people. Its sheer scale demonstrates just how advanced and prosperous this civilization once was. But the greatest surprise was waiting inside the newly opened tomb. Archaeologist Roger Angel Casio, who personally discovered the burial chamber, explained that the skeleton had remained remarkably well preserved despite being approximately 1,300 years old. Based on the burial location and the artifacts found alongside the remains, he believes the individual was most likely either a king or a high-ranking priest who occupied one of the highest positions in Tiwanaku society. According to Casio, not just anyone was granted the privilege of being buried inside the Acapana Pyramid. The resting place itself clearly reflects the extraordinary status of the deceased. Even more astonishing were the priceless treasures that had somehow survived centuries of relentless looting. Experts explain that the Tiwanaku region was repeatedly plundered by Spanish invaders, and countless treasures were taken away over the centuries. Because of this, many historians believed there was little of value left to discover. Yet, almost miraculously, this tomb remained hidden and untouched for hundreds of years. Inside, archaeologists uncovered a magnificent gold crown along with a solid gold pendant, exquisitely crafted and measuring nearly the size of the palm of a hand. These precious artifacts not only showcase the exceptional metalworking skills of the Tiwanaku people, but also serve as powerful symbols of the authority and prestige held by the tomb's owner. The discoveries did not end there. Also found inside the tomb was a llama, an animal deeply connected to the daily life of the ancient Andean people. According to archaeologist Casio, the llama was not merely a valuable possession, it also held profound spiritual significance. The Tiwanaku believed the animal would accompany the deceased into the afterlife and provide nourishment during the journey to the next world. This belief gave rise to a truly unique burial ritual, one that reflects the worldview and religious traditions of a civilization that once flourished across the Andes. As you can see, after centuries of being buried beneath the earth and surviving the relentless search of treasure hunters, this tomb endured like a miracle of history. Every artifact, every piece of gold jewelry, and every bone recovered from the site is helping tell the story of an empire that dominated the Andean highlands more than 1,000 years ago. Isn't that absolutely fascinating? The tomb of an Egyptian queen. After more than 4,000 years, the coffin remained, but the body vanished without a trace. It all began on February 2, 1925. While George Reisner had returned to Boston, Massachusetts to teach at Harvard University, the expedition's photographer, Mohammedani Ibrahim, continued working near the pyramid of Pharaoh Khufu, the monument constructed around the middle of the 3rd millennium BC. As Ibrahim was setting up his camera, he suddenly noticed that one of the tripod's legs was resting on a patch of white plaster exposed through the sand. That tiny detail immediately made him suspect that an undiscovered structure might be buried beneath the desert surface. Unable to wait for Reisner's return, the rest of the expedition decided to begin excavating. After many days of careful work, they uncovered a narrow burial shaft descending approximately 85 feet underground. The shaft was filled with loose rubble, but every indication suggested they had found an ancient tomb. Their excitement, however, was quickly mixed with concern. As you probably know, the Giza Plateau had been repeatedly plundered by tomb robbers over thousands of years. The chances of discovering an untouched royal tomb were considered almost impossible. Unfortunately, just as the team was preparing to continue their excavation, a telegram arrived from Boston ordering all work to stop immediately. As a result, the tomb, designated G7000X, was sealed until the expedition's director could return. Few people realized that George Reisner was one of the world's most respected Egyptologists at the time. Before this discovery, he had directed numerous major archaeological surveys throughout Nubia, the region that stretches across southern Egypt and present-day Sudan. Then, in 1902, the French Egyptologist Gaston Maspero divided the entire Giza Plateau into separate excavation zones and assigned each one to leading specialists. His goal was to prevent tomb robbery while ensuring the preservation of Egypt's ancient monuments. Thanks to that decision, Reisner was given responsibility for the central section of the plateau, the very area that would later produce one of archaeology's most astonishing discoveries. In January 1926, after completing his work in the United States, Reisner returned to Egypt and reopened Tomb G7000X. But the moment he entered the main burial chamber, he could not hide his disappointment. Much of the gold-covered wooden furniture had been severely damaged by water over thousands of years. The condition of the chamber had deteriorated so badly that Reisner feared it could collapse at any moment. Even so, the archaeological team patiently collected every fragment of wood, every decorative inlay, and every tiny artifact with extraordinary care. That patience was richly rewarded. Inside the tomb, the researchers gradually uncovered a ceremonial canopy, a bed, an armchair, and an exquisitely crafted royal carrying chair. Most importantly, the carrying chair still bore the name Hetepheres, allowing archaeologists to identify the tomb's owner as Queen Hetepheres, the mother of Pharaoh Khufu, the king who commissioned the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza. It turned out that for more than 4,000 years, her resting place had remained hidden beneath the shadow of ancient Egypt's greatest monument. Yet the real mystery emerged only after experts opened the finely crafted alabaster sarcophagus in March 1927. Everyone was stunned. There were no human remains inside. The coffin was still there. The funerary treasures were still there, but the queen's body had vanished without leaving a single trace. From that moment on, the fate of Queen Hetepheres became one of Egyptology's greatest unsolved mysteries. George Reisner proposed that the queen had originally been buried near her husband, Pharaoh Sneferu, at Dashur. Later, when Khufu built the new royal cemetery at Giza, her burial was supposedly intended to be moved there. However, for some unknown reason, her body may never have been transferred. Other scholars, however, believe she was actually buried in the small pyramid known as G1A, located beside the Great Pyramid. To this day, these remain only theories, and no evidence has been found that conclusively proves either one. What we do know is that following the historic excavation, many of the artifacts from the tomb were painstakingly restored. Queen Hetepheres's armchair is now on display at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, while her gold-covered carrying chair, after undergoing extensive restoration, is preserved at the Harvard Museum of the Ancient Near East in Cambridge, Massachusetts. If you ever have the opportunity, visiting these museums in person offers a remarkable chance to admire these extraordinary treasures and experience a tangible connection to one of ancient Egypt's greatest mysteries. The 400-year-old skeletons of Arctic whalers reveal a hellish life few people ever knew about. My friend, have you ever wondered what people had to sacrifice to hunt massive whales in the icy waters of the Arctic before modern ships, powerful engines, and today's protective gear existed? Honestly, just imagining men rowing small wooden boats straight toward creatures weighing dozens of tons while battling blizzards and freezing seas is enough to give me chills. But the reality becomes even more horrifying when you learn what archaeologists have uncovered. In recent years, archaeologists have excavated and studied the Lake Neset Cemetery on Norway's Svalbard archipelago, a site considered the largest burial ground of whalers who once worked in the Arctic. The cemetery dates back to the 17th century, when the European whaling industry was entering one of its most prosperous periods. However, this excavation is about much more than history. According to the researchers, they are racing against time because climate change is causing the Arctic permafrost to thaw. As the frozen ground melts, the cemetery is gradually eroding, threatening to destroy priceless evidence that has survived for centuries. Lake Neset is the final resting place of hundreds of men who lost their lives while hunting whales in the freezing Arctic Ocean. Throughout the cemetery, archaeologists have uncovered hundreds of shallow graves marked only by simple piles of stones. There are no elaborate headstones or grand monuments, just the quiet traces of men who spent their lives confronting one of the harshest environments on Earth. Each grave serves as another piece of the puzzle, helping researchers reconstruct the incredibly difficult lives of sailors who lived nearly 4 centuries ago. On May 20th, the results of the study were published in the scientific journal PLOS ONE, immediately drawing the attention of archaeologists around the world. After examining 20 graves at Lake Neset, the research team discovered that most of the men buried there died relatively young and had endured lives of relentless physical hardship. According to Lise Loktu, an archaeologist at the Norwegian Institute for Cultural Heritage Research and the study's lead author, Arctic whaling during the early modern period was one of Europe's first large-scale commercial industries. Yet nearly every task relied entirely on human strength. Every hunting expedition was essentially a fight for survival. The men spent countless hours rowing through freezing seas, approaching enormous whales before striking them with hand-thrown harpoons. Afterward, they still had to haul the massive whale carcasses, weighing dozens of tons, back to their ships, tow them ashore to process the blubber, and continue performing countless physically demanding tasks aboard the vessels while enduring freezing temperatures, constant moisture, and brutal working conditions. The job required extraordinary physical strength, but it also left permanent marks on their bodies. The strongest evidence came from the skeletal remains themselves. Researchers found widespread signs of arthritis, chronic injuries, and long-term physical stress affecting the shoulders, rib cages, spines, hips, knees, and feet. These injuries reveal years of exhausting labor under some of the harshest environmental conditions imaginable. Simply by examining the skeletons, scientists can picture the incredibly difficult lives these whalers endured. Perhaps the most significant discovery, however, was evidence of scurvy, the disease caused by a severe vitamin C deficiency. Most of the skeletons displayed classic symptoms associated with the disease, including muscle weakness, bleeding gums, tooth loss, anemia, and numerous other serious health problems. Today, scurvy is extremely rare thanks to the widespread availability of fresh fruits and vegetables. But from the 15th century through the middle of the 19th century, It was one of the greatest fears of sailors who spent months at sea. Unfortunately, Europeans at the time did not understand what caused the disease. As a result, many refused to eat foods that the indigenous peoples of the Arctic had relied upon for generations to prevent it. One such food was muktuk, a traditional dish made from whale skin and blubber that contains large amounts of both vitamin C and vitamin D. Had these sailors been willing to adopt this local food source, many of them might have avoided the devastating disease that claimed the health and often the lives of countless seafarers. According to archaeologist Lise Locke II, scurvy not only damages the bones but also weakens the immune system, slows wound healing, and dramatically reduces the body's endurance. It may have been one of the major reasons so many of these men were unable to survive the brutal conditions of the Arctic. Researchers also discovered another fascinating clue preserved in their teeth. Most of the skeletons displayed small circular indentations in the tooth enamel, indicating that the men regularly clenched clay tobacco pipes between their teeth. This smoking habit is believed to have reduced vitamin C levels even further, unintentionally making their scurvy much more severe. Today, when archaeologists stand before the silent skeletons at Lychnasset, they are not simply looking at the remains of people who died centuries ago. They are reading an entire chapter of history, a story of unimaginable hardship, sacrifice, and survival during the age of Arctic whaling. And perhaps that finally answers the question we began with. Before modern ships, powerful engines, and advanced protective equipment existed, what did people have to sacrifice to hunt enormous whales in the frozen waters of the Arctic? The answer is truly haunting. What do you think? Do you see it the same way, or do you have a different perspective? If so, don't hesitate to leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts and continue the discussion. 2,000-year-old coffin. Containing the Princess of Mystery, more than a century later, scientists finally discovered the truth. The story began in 1899 in the village of Bagice, located in northwestern Poland. After years of erosion caused by ocean waves and strong coastal winds, a cliff along the shoreline suddenly collapsed, exposing an ancient wooden coffin that tumbled down from the cliff face. This extraordinary discovery quickly attracted the attention of archaeologists, who arrived at the site shortly afterward. When they opened the coffin, they found the remains of an adult woman, along with numerous artifacts that had been preserved in remarkably good condition. The unusual burial method and the valuable objects buried alongside her led experts to give her the mysterious nickname, the Princess of Bagice, even though no evidence has ever been found proving that she actually held royal status. For many decades afterward, archaeologists generally agreed that the woman had died during the Roman period, based on the style and craftsmanship of the artifacts buried with her. However, the more scientists studied the discovery, the more unanswered questions emerged. The first mystery involved the coffin itself. Coffins carved from a single tree trunk are extremely rare because wood normally decays over the course of thousands of years. Yet the Bagice coffin survived thanks to the damp soil conditions in which it had been buried. As a result, it became the only surviving wooden coffin from the Roman Iron Age ever discovered in this region. On February 9th, a study published in the scientific journal Archaeology revealed several surprising new findings. Researchers reported that both the coffin and its lid had been crafted from the same tree trunk, demonstrating a remarkably sophisticated level of craftsmanship. Inside the coffin, in addition to the woman's skeletal remains, archaeologists found a cowhide used as a burial lining, along with numerous valuable grave goods, including a bronze pin, necklaces made of glass beads and amber, and a pair of bronze bracelets. Together, these objects suggest that the woman held a special status during her lifetime. Beginning in the 1980s, archaeologists estimated, based on the style of the grave goods, that the Princess of Bagice had died sometime between AD 110 and AD 160. This conclusion was considered highly convincing and was widely accepted by experts. Everything changed unexpectedly in 2018. Scientists performed radiocarbon dating on one of the woman's teeth, and the results suggested that she may have died between 113 BC and AD 65, nearly 300 years earlier than the artifacts found in her coffin. The enormous discrepancy immediately created a mystery that puzzled archaeologists. If the radiocarbon analysis was correct, it would mean that the grave goods had been placed in the coffin hundreds of years after the woman's death. But such a scenario seemed highly unlikely within the context of an ancient burial ritual. To resolve this contradiction, a research team led by archaeologist Marta Szmajel-Krzyżanowska of the University of Szczecin in Poland decided to examine the coffin itself rather than focus solely on the skeleton. The researchers extracted a tiny core sample from the wood and analyzed it using dendrochronology, commonly known as tree ring dating. After comparing the sample with a database of ancient trees from northwestern Poland, the team determined that the oak tree used to create the coffin had been felled around AD 120. They also concluded that the coffin was likely crafted shortly after the tree was cut down. This discovery completely changed how researchers viewed the Princess of Bagics. If the coffin was made around AD 120 and the grave goods dated to the same period, then it became increasingly likely that the radiocarbon date obtained from the tooth was the inaccurate result. According to the researchers, the discrepancy may have been caused by the woman's diet or the water she consumed during her lifetime. Such factors can sometimes alter the carbon isotope ratios within the body, leading to radiocarbon dates that are not entirely accurate. Today, more than a century has passed since the ancient coffin accidentally fell from the seaside cliff, yet the story of the Princess of Bagics remains far from finished. Each new scientific technique brings researchers closer to the truth while reminding us that archaeology is not simply about digging up buried artifacts. It is also a never-ending process of testing evidence, asking new questions, and uncovering secrets that history has hidden for more than 2,000 years. Perhaps many mysteries surrounding this remarkable woman still remain to be revealed. Until then, we can only continue following the investigation and wait to see what future discoveries may uncover. The body of a Roman girl and a treasure of gold, found inside a 1,700-year-old lead coffin, revealing secrets never before known. Can you imagine a lead coffin lying deep underground for nearly 1,700 years, yet still protecting the body of a young girl, along with a stunning collection of gold jewelry in remarkably preserved condition? It sounds almost unbelievable, doesn't it? But that's the fascinating nature of archaeology. It never stops surprising us, and this discovery is no exception. While surveying an ancient cemetery at the pagan burial cave in the city of Jerusalem, Israel, experts from the Israel Antiquities Authority unexpectedly uncovered a large burial complex containing numerous remarkably well-preserved remains. Among the many artifacts discovered, however, one tomb immediately captured everyone's attention. It was a Roman-era burial dating back approximately 1,700 years. Inside was a lead coffin, a type of coffin that was extremely rare because of its high production cost and was typically reserved for people of high social standing or wealthy families. When the coffin was opened after nearly 2 millennia, the archaeologists were left speechless. Inside lay the body of a young woman, preserved in far better condition than anyone had anticipated. Yet what astonished the research team even more were the objects placed around the deceased. Instead of containing only a few simple belongings, as was common in many ancient burials, this young woman had been laid to rest with an entire collection of exquisitely crafted gold jewelry, suggesting that she may have belonged to a wealthy family or held a special position within Roman society. The artifacts included a pair of gold earrings, a gold hairpin, a gold pendant, as well as numerous carefully crafted gold beads, agate beads, and glass beads. Despite spending nearly 1,700 years beneath the earth, many of these objects have retained their extraordinary beauty, reflecting the exceptional craftsmanship of ancient Roman artisans. Simply by examining the intricate details of each piece, experts can appreciate the tremendous value these ornaments must once have held for their owner. Even more remarkable is the fact that several pieces of jewelry feature the symbol of Luna, the moon goddess in ancient Roman religion. According to researchers, Luna represented far more than the light that illuminated the night sky. She was also regarded as a divine protector who guided and watched over people throughout their lives. For this reason, experts believe these pieces of jewelry most likely accompanied the young woman throughout her lifetime. When she died, her family appears to have buried all of her treasured jewelry alongside her body, believing that these precious objects would continue to protect her spirit as she journeyed into the afterlife. This discovery has also provided valuable new insights into Roman burial customs in the Jerusalem region during the 3rd century AD. Rather than simply burying the dead, Roman families placed spiritually meaningful objects inside the tomb. Each item represented far more than material wealth. It reflected the love of surviving family members, as well as their deep belief in life after death. For archaeologists, this lead coffin is much more than a rare artifact. It serves almost like a time machine, allowing scientists to better understand the daily life, religious beliefs, and culture of the Roman community that lived in Jerusalem nearly 1,700 years ago. The use of a lead coffin, a material rarely found in ordinary burials, also suggests that the young woman's family possessed considerable wealth or held an important position within society. Unfortunately, to this day, the young woman's true identity remains one of the greatest unanswered questions. Even so, thanks to the remarkably well-preserved artifacts buried with her, archaeologists are gradually piecing together the story of her life. Perhaps in the future, DNA analysis and more advanced scientific studies will reveal even more secrets hidden within this ancient lead coffin, helping us better understand the life of a young woman who lived nearly 2,000 years ago, yet continues to leave a lasting impression on us today. Until then, we'll simply have to wait and see what future discoveries reveal. 2,000-year-old tomb containing the body of a pregnant woman in a shocking burial position. History often remembers great emperors, legendary battles, and mighty empires that once ruled vast territories. But sometimes it is an anonymous tomb that has the power to change everything we thought we knew about the past. Beneath layers of earth that have remained undisturbed for more than 2,000 years, every skeleton carries an untold story, and every artifact has the potential to unlock secrets that time has tried to conceal. A remarkable example comes from an archaeological excavation at a Warring States period noble cemetery complex in China's Shanxi province. There, archaeologists uncovered one tomb that stood out from all the others because of its enormous size and its prominent location at the center of the cemetery. From the very beginning, experts believed that the person buried there must have held an exceptionally high status in society more than 2,000 years ago. Yet no one could have imagined that once the final layer of soil was removed, the discovery inside would reveal an even greater mystery. After completing the excavation, archaeologists determined that the tomb extended approximately 33 feet below the surface. Based on their experience, tombs buried at such a depth are usually subjected to enormous pressure from thousands of years of accumulated soil, often leaving skeletons crushed or severely deteriorated. But incredibly, the skeleton inside this tomb had remained almost completely intact. The remarkable state of preservation astonished the entire research team, because such a phenomenon is extremely rare in archaeology. However, the truly shocking discovery came when the experts carefully examined the lower abdomen of the skeleton. There, they found the tiny bones of a fetus, indicating that the woman had died while approximately 8 months pregnant. This extraordinary discovery immediately became the focus of attention throughout the archaeological community. A flood of questions followed. Who was this woman? Why did she die at such a young age? And what happened to the unborn child who never had the chance to enter the world? To find answers, the researchers handled every step of the preservation process with extraordinary care. Recognizing the exceptional scientific value of the remains, they transported the entire skeleton to the Shanxi Provincial Institute of Archaeology, where it could be studied using modern physical anthropology techniques. Although the skeleton appeared remarkably well preserved from the outside, more than 2,000 years of burial had left the bones severely weathered and extremely fragile. Even the slightest impact could have caused them to crumble. For that reason, the excavation team erected a specialized protective tent directly over the burial site to shield the remains from sunlight and minimize environmental damage during the excavation. After analyzing the skeletal features, experts determined that the tomb belonged to a woman who was approximately 30 years old. They also confirmed that the small bones found in her abdomen did indeed belong to a fetus. But what surprised them most was the position in which the woman had been buried. One of her hands rested gently across her lower abdomen, as though she were still embracing the unborn child she carried, while her other hand lay naturally beside her body. This burial posture is extraordinarily rare and has almost never been documented in excavations from the same historical period. Naturally, several theories quickly emerged. Some researchers suggested that she may have died during childbirth. Others believed the unusual position reflected a special burial ritual reserved for members of the noble class. However, after carefully examining the fetal skeleton, experts quickly ruled out the childbirth theory. The fetus's head had not yet descended into the mother's pelvis, indicating that labor had not actually begun. This strongly suggests that the woman's death was likely caused by something entirely unrelated to childbirth. To continue their investigation, the research team decided to conduct DNA testing on both the mother and the fetus. Their goal was not simply to confirm their biological relationship, which was already obvious, but also to reconstruct the genetic profile of the noble class of the state of Jin during the Warring States period. Such information could provide valuable clues about the family's ancestry, physical appearance, and even diseases that may have affected both mother and child. The process, however, is far from simple. Because the bones have become porous and turned dark gray after thousands of years, researchers must grind a small portion of the bone into powder in order to extract usable DNA. If successful, modern technology could potentially reconstruct many of their physical characteristics, including hair color, eye color, and whether they carried inherited disorders, infectious diseases, or even traces of ancient viruses. Even so, both the DNA analysis and the facial and physical reconstruction require an enormous amount of time and absolute precision. To this day, the true cause of this pregnant woman's death remains an unsolved mystery. Perhaps it is precisely this silence, preserved for more than 2,000 years, that makes this tomb one of the most haunting and mysterious archaeological discoveries ever made. It reminds us that beneath every layer of ancient earth lie stories still waiting for modern science to uncover. 61 tons of silver beneath the Atlantic Ocean, the record-breaking recovery of a World War II shipwrecked treasure. Can you believe that nearly 3 miles beneath the surface of the Atlantic Ocean, there were treasures worth tens of millions of dollars lying undisturbed for more than 70 years? What's even more fascinating is that this isn't a pirate legend or a fictional Hollywood adventure. It's the true story of a treasure recovery mission that captured the attention of the entire world. More than 61 tons of pure silver, resting beneath the crushing pressure of the deep ocean, seem destined to remain buried forever alongside the wreck of a wartime cargo ship. Yet through modern technology and years of relentless determination, a professional treasure hunting team accomplished what many had once considered impossible. Not only did they bring the treasure back to the surface, but they also set a world record unlike anything previously achieved in the history of deep-sea salvage. So what happened to the ship? Why was it carrying such an enormous amount of silver? And just how dangerous was the mission to conquer the depths of the Atlantic Ocean? Let's dive into this incredible story. The story begins when Odyssey Marine Exploration, a company specializing in deep-sea treasure recovery headquartered in Tampa, Florida, officially announced an achievement that sent shockwaves through both the marine archaeology community and the commercial salvage industry. In 2013, after years of planning and carrying out the project, the company announced that it had successfully recovered 61 tons of silver bullion from the wreck of the SS Garsapa, a British cargo ship sunk during World War II. The discovery represented not only an extraordinary financial success, but also a historic milestone in the recovery of treasure from the ocean floor. According to Odyssey president Mark Gordon, the operation established a world record. He stated that it was the first time in history that such an enormous quantity of precious metal had ever been successfully recovered from such an extreme depth. Simply reaching the wreck was an enormous challenge. The ship had rested undisturbed for decades in one of the harshest environments humanity has ever attempted to explore. According to precious metals experts, the 61 tons of silver recovered from the wreck were worth an estimated more than $36 million at the time of the recovery. But the true value of the treasure extends far beyond its price. The mission demonstrated the extraordinary progress made in deep-sea exploration technology, remotely operated robotic vehicles, and humanity's ability to reach places that were once considered virtually inaccessible. To understand how this treasure ended up on the ocean floor, we have to go back to February 1941, during one of the darkest periods of World War II. At that time, the SS Garsapa, a British steel-hulled cargo ship measuring approximately 410 feet in length, was transporting cargo when it was struck by a torpedo fired from a German submarine. Within a short time, the ship, and the entire cargo of silver aboard, sank to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean approximately 300 miles off the coast of Ireland. From that day forward, the massive treasure rested nearly 3 miles beneath the surface, where water pressure is hundreds of times greater than at sea level and sunlight never reaches. Just imagine what conditions are like at that depth. Even today's most advanced deep-sea submersibles face enormous risks. A single mistake could destroy equipment worth millions of dollars. For that reason, Odyssey invested millions of dollars before knowing whether the project would ever succeed. According to Mark Gordon, it was one of the biggest gambles the company had ever taken. After numerous extended recovery operations on the ocean floor, Odyssey finally achieved its objective. The company reported that it successfully recovered approximately 99% of the silver still remaining inside the wreck. Under an agreement with the British government, Odyssey was allowed to retain 80% of the treasure's value, while all of the recovered silver was transported to a secure location in the United Kingdom for storage and processing. The operation's tremendous success also inspired even greater ambitions. Mark Gordon revealed that Odyssey planned to continue investing in future deep-sea treasure recovery projects. According to estimates from the United Nations, there are currently around 3 million shipwrecks scattered across the world's oceans. Many of these wrecks still contain valuable cargo, precious metals, and historically significant artifacts worth billions of dollars, all waiting to be discovered. 24 medieval warriors buried with their weapons. Shock archaeologists in Poland. Just imagine this for a moment. What if you were having a completely ordinary day at work, and the excavator beneath your feet suddenly struck a cemetery that had been buried for more than 1,000 years? How would you react? Would you be calm enough to keep digging when no one had any idea what might still be hidden beneath the ground? Sounds like something straight out of a science fiction movie, doesn't it? But the truth is, this actually happened in real life. And what archaeologists uncovered afterward was even stranger than anyone could have imagined. The story began in 2024, during the construction of a natural gas pipeline in the village of Borkowo in northern Poland. As workers were excavating the site, they unexpectedly noticed unusual signs beneath the soil. They immediately stopped all construction and notified the local authorities. Within just a few hours, archaeologists arrived to examine the area. At that moment, no one realized they were about to begin one of Poland's most remarkable archaeological excavations in recent years. So, what do you think they found? One ancient grave after another slowly emerged from the earth, and as the excavation continued, more and more burials were uncovered. Eventually, experts determined that the site was a cemetery dating back to the 10th century, meaning it had remained hidden for over a millennium. But what truly stunned everyone was the identity of the people buried there. Archaeologists uncovered the remains of 24 adult men, all resting beneath the soil. What made the discovery especially unusual was that nearly every one of them had been buried with weapons. Doesn't that seem a little strange? Normally, a cemetery reflects how people honored and laid their loved ones to rest. But here, every grave seemed to tell the story of a very different life. Alongside the skeletons were battle axes, arrowheads, knives, rings, and strings of red agate beads, all still lying in their original positions after more than 1,000 years. Just by examining these artifacts, archaeologists were faced with a major question: who were these men really? Determined to find the answer, researchers began investigating. According to the initial findings, the remains date to the reign of Duke Mieszko I, who ruled Poland from AD 960 to 992. He is widely regarded as the leader who laid the foundation for the unified Polish state. Because of this, many experts believe these men may have been elite warriors who once fought under his command. However, another theory has also emerged. Some researchers suggest they may have been among the first Christians living in the region during a time when Poland was undergoing a major religious transformation. Oddly enough, the greatest mystery isn't the number of skeletons or the weapons found beside them, it's the way they were buried. According to pagan traditions, the dead were often buried with numerous grave goods to use in the afterlife. Early Christian burial practices, on the other hand, followed very different customs. Yet this cemetery appears to bear signs of both belief systems. The bodies were buried intact rather than cremated, which aligns with early Christian practices. However, they were also accompanied by valuable grave goods, a tradition much more closely associated with pagan beliefs. And that's not all. When archaeologists carefully studied the excavation map, they noticed something even more unusual. The graves were not arranged in orderly rows, as was typical of most medieval cemeteries. Instead, they appeared to have been placed somewhat randomly, as though the burials had taken place under a variety of different circumstances. This seemingly minor detail left the research team puzzled because it didn't match any known pattern of medieval burial grounds. That is precisely why the discovery at Borkovo quickly attracted the attention of archaeologists around the world. The site doesn't simply tell the story of 24 individuals who died more than 1,000 years ago. It also reflects a turbulent period in history when ancient beliefs were gradually giving way to a new religious era. Every grave, every burial artifact, and every skeleton represents another piece of a historical puzzle. But even today, many pieces of that puzzle are still missing. So, what do you think? After hearing the entire story, do you believe this really was the final resting place of an elite force that once served Duke Misko I? Or do you think another secret still lies hidden beneath the surface? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Who knows, your theory might one day match the very explanation that archaeologists ultimately proved to be true. And wouldn't that be incredible? An 800-year-old treasure of 20,000 medieval silver coins was buried beneath a backyard. You know, the world of archaeology is truly fascinating. There are treasures that people spend their entire lives searching for across the globe without ever finding. Yet sometimes, someone who isn't even looking for treasure, armed with nothing more than a shovel, no secret map, and no high-tech metal detector, can accidentally stumble upon one of the most astonishing archaeological discoveries imaginable while simply digging for fishing worms. And the story you're about to hear is the perfect example of that. It reminds us that history is sometimes rewritten through the most ordinary moments. It all began in 2024, on the grounds of a summer cottage in Stockholm County, Sweden. A man was digging in his yard to collect worms for an upcoming fishing trip when he unexpectedly struck something unusual buried deep beneath the ground. At first, he had no idea he had found anything significant, but the deeper he dug, the more fragments of metal and ancient coins began to appear. Realizing that this could be an important discovery, the man immediately stopped digging and contacted the local authorities. That single decision marked the beginning of an excavation that would astonish the archaeological community. Just a few days later, experts arrived at the site. As the final layers of soil were carefully removed, they could hardly believe what they were seeing. Buried beneath the ground was a bronze cauldron, worn away by centuries of time, yet still filled to the brim with shimmering silver coins. Just imagine that for a moment. After lying undisturbed underground for hundreds of years, this weathered cauldron had silently protected an enormous fortune that no one even knew existed. What does that tell us? For archaeologists, the preliminary inventory revealed something extraordinary. The find was identified as a medieval treasure weighing about 13 pounds, containing an estimated more than 20,000 silver coins. That number alone makes it one of the largest medieval silver hoards ever discovered in Sweden. Archaeologist Sofia Andersson explained that the research team has not yet determined the exact number of coins, but she believes the final total could easily exceed 20,000. In other words, a man who simply wanted to dig up a few worms for fishing accidentally uncovered the kind of treasure that many archaeologists spend their entire careers hoping to find. But perhaps the most fascinating part of the discovery is the coins themselves. According to the initial analysis, most of the coins date back to the 12th century. Many of them bear the inscription Canutus, the Latin name of King Knut Eriksson, who ruled Sweden from AD 1173 to around 1195. This indicates that the coins were minted during his reign, and the surprises didn't end there. Experts also identified several extremely rare coins known as bishop's coins. Their surfaces are engraved with the image of a bishop holding a pastoral staff, a symbol of the church's authority during the Middle Ages. Artifacts like these rarely survive in such remarkable numbers. By now, you're probably wondering the same thing the researchers are. Why would such an enormous treasure be buried deep underground, only to be abandoned forever? That remains the biggest mystery surrounding the discovery. According to researchers, the late 12th century was a turbulent period in Swedish history. Military conflicts and campaigns to expand Swedish territory into parts of Finland created widespread instability. During those uncertain times, many wealthy families buried their valuables, hoping to return and recover them after the wars had ended. But for reasons no one can know for certain, the owner of this treasure never came back. Perhaps they were killed in battle. Perhaps they died during an epidemic. Or perhaps they were forced to leave the region forever. Whatever happened, the bronze cauldron containing tens of thousands of silver coins remained hidden beneath the earth for nearly 800 years. What makes this story even more compelling is that the research is still ongoing. Experts have not yet fully uncovered the treasure's origin or its complete historical significance. Meanwhile, the Stockholm County Administrative Board has submitted a report to the Swedish National Heritage Board, the agency responsible for deciding whether the lucky man who made this extraordinary discovery will receive any financial reward or legal compensation. So, what about you? If one day you were working in your own backyard and suddenly uncovered a bronze cauldron filled with tens of thousands of ancient silver coins, how do you think you would react? Would you stay calm and report the discovery to the authorities just as this man did? Or would you simply stand there in disbelief, unable to process what had just happened right before your eyes? Let me know your answer in the comments below. Rare ancient Roman weapons cache, discovered in a remote cave in Israel. An ancient cache of Roman-era weapons has just been discovered in a remote cave in Israel. But behind these swords lies a historical story filled with mysteries that have yet to be solved. The weapons were found inside a small cave located within the Ungeti Nature Reserve, a famous site that is also extremely difficult to access. The reserve sits along the western shore of the Dead Sea, a land rich with mysterious stories and traces of ancient history. It seemed almost impossible that anyone would ever discover this hidden cache. Yet archaeologists bravely made their way across steep, treacherous cliffs to uncover another remarkable piece of the ancient past. So why were Roman weapons hidden inside such a mysterious cave? Researchers have proposed a fascinating theory. They believe the weapons may have been war booty captured by Jewish rebels during their uprising against the rule of the Roman Empire. At that time, Roman troops came under attack, and these swords may have been seized by Jewish fighters following fierce battles. When they were finally discovered, the Roman swords were astonishingly well preserved. Archaeologists were amazed to find that the blades were still sharp and had remained inside their original wooden scabbards. Even the finely crafted hilts, made of either wood or metal, had survived the passage of time. Most remarkably, 3 of the swords featured blades measuring approximately 24 to 26 inches, matching the design of the spatha, the standard sword carried by Roman soldiers. A 4th sword had a shorter blade measuring about 18 inches and may have belonged to a soldier of lower rank. What makes this discovery even more fascinating is the preservation process. After carefully removing the swords from a narrow crevice inside the cave, archaeologists immediately transported them to the laboratories of the Israel Antiquities Authority for examination and conservation. The initial analysis revealed that these were standard-issue swords used by Roman soldiers stationed in the ancient region of Judea, a strategically important territory in the history of the Roman Empire. These weapons offer us a clearer glimpse into the lives of Roman soldiers, as well as the uprisings and intense battles fought between 2 powerful forces. They were not merely instruments of war. They also serve as vivid evidence of the relentless struggles that shaped history over thousands of years. You may be wondering, besides these swords, what else could still be hidden inside unexplored caves and forgotten landscapes? What other historical secrets are waiting to be uncovered? Although we cannot yet answer those questions with certainty, discoveries like this remind us that countless mysteries of the ancient world remain unsolved. And with every new archaeological find, we come one step closer to understanding the past. Until then, we can only look forward to the remarkable discoveries archaeologists will bring us in the years ahead. 2,000-year-old Roman horse head, pulled from a well in Germany, a discovery that rewrote history. The story began in 2009 during an archaeological excavation in the state of Hesse in central Germany. Experts from the Hesse State Museum were investigating an area believed to have once been a Roman military outpost. At first, they were simply hoping to uncover a few pieces of pottery or the remains of ancient structures. But the deeper they dug, the more they realized that something far more extraordinary was hidden beneath the ground. Then came the unforgettable moment. Buried beneath layers of soil and mud that had accumulated over nearly 2 millennia, a massive metal object slowly began to emerge. But it wasn't until the final layer of earth was carefully cleared away that the entire archaeological team was left almost speechless. Before them stood an enormous bronze horse head, crafted with astonishing attention to detail. Despite having remained underground for nearly 2,000 years, The horse's facial features, flowing mane, and ears were still remarkably well preserved, demonstrating the incredible bronze casting skills of the ancient Romans. Just imagine being the first person to see this artifact after 2,000 years. How would you feel? It would probably be more than simple excitement. It would feel as though you were reaching out and touching a piece of history itself. After careful study, experts determined that the bronze horse head had originally been part of a monumental Roman equestrian statue known as Augustus. The statue was erected when the Romans established a military outpost in what is now the German state of Hesse. At that time, the Roman Empire was steadily expanding northward, and monumental statues like this served not only as works of art, but also as powerful symbols of Roman authority and imperial presence. However, what fascinated archaeologists most was not simply the beauty of the artifact, but the story behind it. Just 5 years after the statue was erected, history took a dramatic turn. The Romans suffered one of the greatest military defeats in their history during the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest. Following their decisive victory, the ancient Germanic tribes rose up and destroyed many symbols of Roman power throughout the region. The statue of Augustus was no exception. Based on the surviving evidence, researchers believe the monument was deliberately smashed into numerous pieces. The bronze horse head was separated from the rest of the statue and thrown into a well, where it remained hidden for nearly 2,000 years. Ironically, the thick layer of mud and the nearly sealed environment at the bottom of the well protected the artifact from severe corrosion, allowing it to survive in astonishing condition until the present day. Isn't that remarkable? Sometimes, an act intended to destroy something ends up becoming the perfect method of preserving it. Had the horse head not been thrown into that well all those centuries ago, it might have been melted down or completely destroyed. If that had happened, the modern world might never have known it had ever existed. More importantly, this discovery provided historians with invaluable evidence about the extent of the Roman presence in what is now Germany. For many years, some scholars believed that the Romans had never constructed large-scale monuments in this region. However, the discovery of this massive bronze statue, along with other archaeological evidence found at the site, demonstrated that the Romans had invested significantly in the area before their devastating defeat at the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest forced them to abandon their ambitions of expanding farther north. Today, the bronze horse head is regarded as one of the rarest and most valuable Roman artifacts ever discovered in Germany. It is not merely an extraordinary work of ancient art, it is also a silent witness to a turning point that forever changed the course of European history. More than 70 skeletons, discovered in a 1,000-year-old pre-Inca tomb in Peru. My friends, let me ask you something. If an ancient tomb contained the remains of dozens of adults and children buried together, would you believe it was the final resting place of several generations of one family? Or could it be the silent evidence of a terrible tragedy that unfolded 1,000 years ago? If you don't yet have your own answer, then let's travel back in time to 2023. That was the year archaeologists from the Free University of Brussels, Belgium, made an extraordinary discovery while excavating the ancient religious center of Pachacamac, located about 20 miles southeast of Lima, Peru. Their discovery would begin to answer those very questions. At first, the archaeologists, just like the rest of us, believed they had uncovered nothing more than an ordinary ancient burial, similar to many others found in the past. But the farther they expanded the excavation, the more they realized they were looking at something far greater than they had ever expected. Once the final layers of soil had been carefully removed, an enormous oval-shaped communal tomb, measuring approximately 66 feet in length, emerged from the ground. Dating to around AD 1000, the burial belongs to the pre-Inca period, several centuries before the rise of the mighty Inca Empire. The sheer size of the tomb alone convinced experts that it was one of the most significant archaeological discoveries made at the Pachacamac site in recent years. Inside the tomb, archaeologists uncovered the remains of more than 70 individuals, including dozens of infants and young children. It was a scene that left everyone speechless. Each skeleton seemed to tell the story of a life that had ended 1,000 years ago. Yet the reason all of these people were buried together remains a mystery to this day. The discoveries didn't stop there. The research team also uncovered around 100 grave goods buried alongside the deceased. Just imagine it, After 1,000 years, these objects were still resting exactly where they had been placed. Among them were ceramic animal figurines depicting dogs and guinea pigs, pottery vessels, jewelry crafted from copper and gold alloys, bottle gourds, and beautifully carved wooden masks painted with human faces. Every artifact reflects the remarkable craftsmanship and rich spiritual beliefs of the pre-Inca people who lived more than a millennium ago. According to Dr. Lawrence Owens of the Free University of Brussels, the large number of valuable grave goods does not necessarily mean this was a royal burial. Based on the arrangement of both the skeletons and the artifacts, he and his colleagues believe the site was most likely a communal burial place used by multiple families belonging to the same extended lineage. In other words, this may have been a cemetery serving a close-knit community connected by blood rather than the final resting place of kings or nobles, as many people might assume. But that raises another question, one that has become the greatest challenge for archaeologists. Were all more than 70 individuals buried at the same time? Or was this tomb used continuously over many generations? If everyone was buried at once, what happened? Could an epidemic, a natural disaster, or a violent conflict have claimed the lives of an entire community? On the other hand, if the tomb served as a burial site for generations, why was it organized in such an unusual way? So far, researchers have been unable to provide a definitive answer. They continue to analyze the skeletal remains, establish more precise dates, and conduct DNA studies in the hope of uncovering the relationships among the people buried within the tomb. Isn't this what makes archaeology so remarkable? Sometimes the greatest value of an excavation isn't the gold, the treasures, or the ancient artifacts themselves. Instead, it's the opportunity to bring us closer to the lives of people who disappeared from the world long ago. Every skeleton, every wooden mask, and every burial object is like another missing piece of history, quietly waiting for modern researchers to put the puzzle together and tell the story of a civilization that faded into the distant past. Isn't that absolutely fascinating? The 3,300-year-old clay coffin with a human face discovered in Israel. There are priceless artifacts that are not made of gold or precious stones, yet their historical value is powerful enough to reshape what we know about the past. To prove this, I will take you to a surprising excavation site where archaeologists not only discovered an ancient skeleton, but also uncovered a coffin so rare in Egyptian style that for the past 50 years, Israel has only recorded one similar artifact. This story began in 2016 during an archaeological excavation near Tel Shaddud, in the Jezreel Valley in northern Israel. Experts from the Israel Antiquities Authority were studying a site believed to have been inhabited thousands of years ago. At first, they only expected to find traces of ancient structures or familiar pottery fragments. However, the deeper they dug, the more they realized the site was hiding something far more significant. Then came the moment that made the entire research team hold their breath. Just beneath a thick layer of soil, they discovered a cylindrical clay coffin, still remarkably well preserved despite being over 3 millennia old. But what shocked everyone was not just its age, it was the lid. On it, ancient craftsmen had sculpted a human face with a calm expression, along with 2 arms crossed over the chest, a burial style strongly associated with ancient Egypt. Imagine this. After more than 3,300 years, seeing that face emerging from the earth, would it feel like you were staring at someone who had only just fallen into a 1,000-year sleep? Through research, experts determined that the coffin dates back to the reign of Pharaoh Seti I, who ruled from around 1290 to 1279 BC. This was a period when Egypt was expanding its influence into the Near East. Therefore, the discovery of an Egyptian-style coffin in Israel immediately drew major attention from archaeologists, as it reflects the connections between ancient Egypt and this region more than 3,000 years ago. But the story did not end there. When the coffin was carefully opened, archaeologists found the skeleton of an adult male still inside. Around him were various burial objects, including ceramic jars containing food, a dagger, a bronze bowl, and animal bones. According to experts, these items were likely not placed randomly. They may have been offerings to the gods, as well as provisions for the deceased's journey into the afterlife, consistent with ancient Egyptian beliefs. Have you noticed something fascinating here? The ancient Egyptians believed that death was not the end, but the beginning of another life. Because of this belief, they carefully prepared everything for the deceased, from food and weapons to essential personal belongings. This coffin is a vivid testament to that worldview, even though it was discovered in Israel rather than Egypt. What makes this discovery even more remarkable is how extremely rare such clay coffins with human faces are in Israel. According to the Israel Antiquities Authority, before the 2016 excavation, the most recent similar coffin had been found about 50 years earlier. This means that after half a century, archaeologists finally had the chance to study another artifact of this extraordinary type. As a result, the coffin not only helps researchers better understand ancient Egyptian burial rituals, but also provides important evidence of the presence, influence, and connections between Egyptian civilization and the ancient Canaanite region. Every carved line, every burial object, and even the skeleton itself feels like a piece of a larger puzzle, slowly revealing a chapter of history long buried by time. And what do you think? Who was the man inside this extraordinary coffin? Was he an Egyptian official sent to the land of Canaan, a warrior serving under Pharaoh Seti I, or simply a local resident of high status who was buried according to Egyptian customs? Share your thoughts in the comments. Perhaps one of your theories today may be closer than we think to the answer archaeologists will uncover in the future, as more secrets buried beneath the land of Israel continue to be revealed. The 2,500-year-old burial pit containing 4 chariots and over 90 horse skeletons that shocked China. Have you ever wondered how kings and nobles in China were sent into the afterlife more than 2,500 years ago? Was a single coffin enough, or did they bring an entire army with them? War chariots and dozens of war horses to continue their journey in the world beyond death? It may sound like a legend, but it truly existed. And what is even more astonishing is that this secret lay hidden beneath the earth for millennia, until an archaeological excavation accidentally opened a gateway back to the spring and autumn period, one of the most turbulent yet glorious eras in ancient Chinese history. In 2024, during the excavation of an ancient tomb site in the city of Xinjiang, Henan Province in central China, experts from the Henan Provincial Institute of Cultural Heritage and Archaeology uncovered a series of extraordinary archaeological remains. At first, they only expected to find familiar artifacts such as pottery, bronze items, or traces of ancient architecture. But as each layer of soil was carefully removed, what emerged left the entire team in shock. Can you guess what could astonish even experienced archaeologists? Deep underground, they discovered a massive burial pit, and inside it were 4 ancient chariots preserved in astonishing condition. Initial analysis showed that these chariots date back to the spring and autumn period, roughly between 770 and 476 BC, more than 2,500 years ago. Simply finding multiple intact chariots at once is already extremely rare in Chinese archaeology. But what stunned researchers even more was the size of one of the chariots. The largest measured approximately 8.4 feet long and 5.4 feet wide, making it the biggest ancient chariot ever discovered in Xinjiang. Just imagine, more than 2 millennia ago, when most vehicles were entirely handcrafted, ancient artisans built such a massive structure with remarkable durability. Even more impressive, the surface of the chariot was decorated with intricate bronze fittings and animal bone inlays, showing that the craftsmanship and metallurgical skills of the spring and autumn Chinese civilization had already reached a highly advanced level. But the excavation did not stop there. As researchers expanded the dig, they made another staggering discovery: the skeletal remains of more than 90 horses buried alongside the chariots. At that moment, the entire site fell into silence. Over 90 war horses buried in a single tomb complex not only reflects the enormous scale of the burial ritual, but also strongly suggests that the owner of the tomb must have been someone of extremely high status. According to preliminary assessments, this burial site likely belonged to a noble family or royal lineage of the state of Zheng, one of the political entities during the spring and autumn period. At that time, chariots were not just transportation or instruments of war, they were symbols of power, wealth, and social rank. Therefore, burying multiple chariots along with dozens of war horses was a ritual reserved only for the highest elite class. Do you find this astonishing? Just by examining how someone was buried, archaeologists can infer their identity and level of power in life. This is what makes archaeology so fascinating. Every artifact is not just an ancient object, it is a silent witness telling the story of the past. Today, experts are still continuing their study of the bronze artifacts discovered in the tomb. They hope detailed analyses will shed light on the metallurgical technology, chariot-making techniques, and production methods of people in China more than 2,500 years ago. At the same time, these artifacts may also provide crucial clues about the identity of the buried individual, their social status, and the burial customs of the state of Zheng. What is truly fascinating is that every new discovery feels like opening another door into history. A carved bronze fragment, a decayed wheel, or even a horse skeleton that seems meaningless at first glance can help scientists reconstruct a civilization long lost to time. And it is discoveries like these that continue to deepen our understanding of life, warfare, and power during one of the most important periods in ancient Chinese history. The weapon cache in the Yotvingian warrior's grave reveals the power of a fearsome European warrior tribe. Did you know that in ancient times, there was a people who were praised for their terrifying combat abilities, but were also infamous for bold raids and merciless battles? They emerged in history and then gradually disappeared from its pages, leaving behind only faint traces for later generations. Yet after hundreds of years buried underground, a grave discovered in Poland has unexpectedly revealed secrets about one of the most powerful warriors of that tribe. So what kind of status would a person need to be buried with an entire cache of weapons? Let's travel back in time to uncover this fascinating story. But before we get to the excavation, we need to understand who this grave's owner was. They were the Yotvingians, also known as the Sudovians, a Baltic tribe that lived in areas of present-day Poland, Lithuania, and Belarus from around the 5th century BC up to the Middle Ages. They were widely known across Eastern Europe for their exceptional fighting skills and strong warrior spirit. Not only did they defend their own territories, but the Yotvingians also served as mercenaries for the princes of Kiev and Rus. At the same time, they frequently clashed with Polish princes and the Teutonic Knights. Historical records often describe them as a fierce, resilient, and extremely difficult to subdue tribe. However, after many centuries, these warriors gradually vanished, leaving behind only scattered written records and buried archaeological remains. In 2024, during the excavation of a medieval Yotvingian cemetery near the city of Suwałki in northeastern Poland, experts from the Suwałki Regional Museum made a discovery that immediately drew the attention of archaeologists. At first, they only expected to find a few ordinary graves, similar to previous excavations. But as layers of soil were carefully removed, a burial containing an unusual number of artifacts began to emerge. Can you guess what immediately told archaeologists this was not the resting place of an ordinary person? The answer lay in the grave goods surrounding the skeleton. As the excavation continued, a large number of weapons and combat equipment gradually appeared. Swords, daggers, arrowheads, horse spurs, belt buckles, horse fittings, and dozens of other small pieces of military gear were all found in the same grave. Without even needing detailed analysis, experts already understood that the person buried here must have been someone of extremely high status within Yotvingian society. Have you noticed something interesting? In many ancient cultures, the dead were buried with objects connected to their lives. So when a grave is filled with weapons and combat equipment like this, it almost tells us directly that the person inside was a true warrior, possibly even a leader or someone with an important role within the tribe. Through research, archaeologists determined that the burial dates from the 11th to the 13th century, a period when the Yotvingians were still a formidable force in the Baltic region. This was also a time when they were frequently engaged in conflicts with neighboring powers in order to defend their territory and maintain influence. Therefore, the presence of so many weapons in the grave not only reflects the status of the deceased, but also partially recreates a brutal era of medieval European warfare. The 1,000-year-old noble couple's graves in Germany, the husband's skeleton intact, while the wife's facial bones mysteriously vanished. Have you ever noticed something truly fascinating in archaeology? Sometimes, what takes scientists years to study is not gold, silver, or million-dollar treasures. Instead, what troubles them the most is often just an incomplete skeleton, because every missing bone, every unusual trace, can be a piece of a story buried for thousands of years. And today's case is a perfect example. This story began in 2024 in the city of Eisleben, in the German state of Saxony-Anhalt. During an archaeological excavation there, experts from the State Office for Heritage Management and Archaeology Saxony-Anhalt, LDA, discovered two ancient graves lying right next to each other. From the very first moments, they realized these were not ordinary burials. Surprisingly, both graves were less than 12 inches below the surface, yet they still preserved a remarkable number of traces after nearly a millennium. When the final layer of soil was carefully brushed away, the first skeleton slowly emerged. It belonged to a woman. But as archaeologists cleaned the area around the skull, the atmosphere at the excavation site grew increasingly silent. They discovered that all of her facial bones had completely disappeared, leaving behind only an empty, mysterious skull. There were no clear signs of disturbance, yet the face seemed to have vanished in a way that no one could easily explain. Try to imagine being one of the archaeologists at that moment. If you were the first person to see that skull, what would you think? Was it simply natural decomposition over centuries, or had someone once opened the grave in the past? And the mystery did not end there. Even more strangely, right beside the woman was the grave of a man, believed by experts to be her husband. The two graves were side by side, buried at the same depth, in the same type of soil, and dated to the same period. Yet the man's skeleton was almost perfectly preserved. His skull and facial bones remained intact, creating a puzzling contrast between two individuals buried just a few feet apart. Not only the skeletons, but the excavation also revealed other valuable finds. Inside both graves, archaeologists discovered jewelry, coins, and finely crafted accessories, indicating that both individuals belonged to a wealthy social class. In particular, the man's grave contained several burial goods with strong military significance, including a dagger, a belt set with metal fittings, and a ceremonial staff, items often associated with military commanders or leaders in the medieval period. Based on these findings, experts concluded that the couple were local nobles who lived around the 10th century AD. Their social status was clearly high, and the burial customs reflected the wealth and power they once held in life. However, the more researchers learned about them, the more they were puzzled by the woman's case. Why did only her facial bones disappear? If environmental conditions were responsible, why was the man's skeleton next to her unaffected? If human intervention was involved, what was the purpose of removing only the facial bones? Or could this represent a special burial ritual unknown to us today? At present, experts continue to analyze the skeletons, soil composition, and remaining traces in hopes of finding answers. But for now, the woman's empty skull remains one of the greatest mysteries of the excavation. And what do you think? What caused the woman's facial bones to disappear while her husband's skeleton remained almost perfectly preserved? Was it a rare natural phenomenon, evidence of an ancient ritual, or is there still another explanation waiting to be uncovered by archaeologists? Share your thoughts in the comments below so we can discuss it together. The 3,000-year-old young woman's tomb containing a lavish treasure that shocked Iran. During an excavation at the ancient site of Tepe Chalo in northeastern Iran, archaeologists from the British Institute of Persian Studies uncovered a remarkably significant archaeological complex. At first, the goal of the excavation was simply to learn more about the history of the region. However, as layers of ancient soil were carefully removed, a Bronze Age burial suddenly emerged, along with a series of artifacts that shocked the archaeological community. As experts meticulously cleaned each layer of soil, they determined that this was the resting place of a girl who had not yet reached the age of 18. Despite her young age, what was buried with her was completely contrary to what one might expect from a teenager living 3,000 years ago. Surrounding her skeleton were 34 highly valuable grave goods made of gold, bronze, ivory, chlorite stone, serpentine, lapis lazuli, and pottery. The quantity and materials alone clearly indicated that she was far from an ordinary individual. Do you know what surprised archaeologists the most? It was the level of craftsmanship in each object. They discovered a pair of gold earrings, a gold ring, and 4 bronze pins, one of which was shaped like a hand holding a rose, crafted with remarkable precision. In addition, there was a bronze mirror, 2 bracelets, 7 stone artifacts, and 2 ivory hairpins, objects that would still be impressive even by today's standards. But there was one artifact that stood out above all others: 3 cosmetic boxes made of chlorite stone. One of them was engraved with the image of a snake and a scorpion, carved with extraordinary detail. According to researchers, this was not merely a cosmetic container. It also reflected the high level of craftsmanship, as well as the religious beliefs and symbolic worldview of Bronze Age communities. In addition, the tomb contained a unique seal engraved with the image of human feet surrounded by circular motifs, an extremely rare artifact that archaeologists are still working to interpret. Can you believe it? A girl not even 18 years old was buried with a collection of treasures that rival or even surpass many elite noble graves. This raises a major question. Who was she really? According to Dr. Ali Vahdati, along with researchers Raphaël Biscone, Roberto Dan, and Marie-Claude Tremouille from the British Institute of Persian Studies, the richness of the burial goods suggests that this young girl likely held a highly important social role within the Greater Khorasan Civilization, GKC, an ancient culture that once flourished but was later lost to history. Experts also consider this the most lavish tomb ever discovered at Tepe Chalo, and one of the most significant archaeological findings related to the Greater Khorasan culture to date. Each artifact unearthed not only reflects wealth, but also helps scientists better understand the lifestyle, social status, craftsmanship, and belief systems of the people who lived in this region 3,000 years ago. Human sacrifice. Victim found in a 4,000-year-old tomb in China. My friend, have you ever wondered what life was like around 4,000 years ago, when people had not yet developed writing to record their history? What did they believe in, and what kinds of rituals did they perform? What if, one day, archaeologists uncovered an ancient cemetery containing hundreds of graves, only to discover evidence suggesting that some of the people buried there did not die of old age or disease, but may instead have been sacrificed in ancient rituals? It sounds like something straight out of a movie, doesn't it? Yet this is a real archaeological discovery that has drawn significant attention from researchers. It centers on a mysterious prehistoric cemetery, preserving crucial clues about a civilization that disappeared thousands of years ago in China. The story begins near the village of Mogu in northwestern China. There, archaeologists uncovered an enormous ancient cemetery. Initial studies dated the entire burial ground to approximately 4,000 years ago, a time before writing had developed in this region. As a result, nearly everything we know about the people who lived there must be reconstructed from what has remained buried beneath the earth. Excavations were carried out continuously from 2008 to 2010. Between August and November 2009 alone, archaeologists excavated nearly 300 graves. Over the course of the entire project, hundreds of burials were uncovered, making Mogu one of the most important prehistoric archaeological sites in northwestern China. Further investigation revealed that the graves had all been dug deep into the ground, with most of them oriented toward the northwest. This suggests that burials were not conducted randomly, but followed specific customs and religious beliefs. Many graves also contained small side niches that had been intentionally created to hold grave goods. Inside these niches, archaeologists discovered finely crafted pottery, reflecting the remarkable craftsmanship of the people who lived there. Even more intriguingly, many of the graves were covered by raised earthen mounds, which researchers believe were built to mark the burial locations so future generations could recognize them. Archaeologists also discovered numerous family tombs. Family members had been laid to rest side by side, all facing the same direction, and were buried with valuable possessions for their time, including necklaces, jewelry, weapons, and decorated pottery. These discoveries suggest that the ancient inhabitants placed great importance on burial rituals and held strong beliefs about life after death. However, what attracted the greatest attention from archaeologists was a number of graves that differed completely from the others. After studying the positions of the skeletons, some researchers concluded that several individuals may not have received normal burials. According to the excavation team, these skeletons had tightly curled arms and legs instead of being laid out straight, as was typical in standard burials. Their faces were also turned toward the nearby niches containing grave goods. Based on the condition of the bones and teeth, experts estimated that some of these individuals were only about 13 years old when they died. From these observations, researchers proposed that these individuals may have been victims of ritual sacrifice. However, this remains an archaeological hypothesis based on the evidence currently available and should not be considered a final conclusion. Alongside the skeletal remains, experts also recovered a large collection of valuable artifacts. Among them were beautifully crafted ceramic vessels decorated with intricate patterns. Some featured circular designs resembling the letter O, while others displayed wavy lines carved around the necks of the vessels. Researchers believe these decorations may have held religious significance or represented the distinctive artistic style of the people who lived during that period. The discoveries did not stop with pottery. Archaeologists also uncovered a variety of ancient bronze and stone weapons, including curved bronze swords, heavy stone maces capable of delivering devastating blows, as well as daggers and cutting knives. These artifacts not only demonstrate the advanced metalworking and tool-making skills of the ancient inhabitants, but also reveal a society capable of producing weapons for hunting or conflict. Based on all of these findings, researchers concluded that the cemetery belonged to the Chijia culture. The Chijia people occupied an area covering more than 861,000 square feet. They built semi-subterranean houses to adapt to their natural environment, and the entrances to most of their homes faced south. Today, the Chijia culture is recognized as one of the defining cultures of the early Bronze Age in northwestern China. Even so, one question remains unanswered. If these skeletons truly belong to victims of ritual sacrifice, why did the Chijia people perform such ceremonies? Were they expressions of religious belief, rituals intended to ensure successful harvests, or part of a unique tradition that has been lost to history? Scientists continue to investigate these questions in the hope of finding a definitive answer. Perhaps before long, new discoveries will finally reveal the truth. Until then, we'll simply have to wait and see. 2,500-year-old tomb, engineered to survive earthquakes, still amazes modern engineers. Did you know that the ancient world is full of incredible wonders, especially when it comes to its architectural achievements? Some ancient structures leave us speechless because of their enormous size. Others are famous for their breathtaking beauty or the treasures hidden within them. But a few monuments inspire an entirely different question, one that even modern engineers struggle to answer. How has this structure remained standing for more than 2,500 years despite enduring countless powerful earthquakes? What makes this even more remarkable is that it was built long before reinforced concrete, heavy machinery, or any form of modern technology existed. Yet today, it remains almost completely intact, as if the builders who lived thousands of years ago had discovered a construction secret that humanity would not fully understand until much later. Here's a question for you. If you could travel back more than 2 millennia and watch ancient craftsmen constructing a monument capable of withstanding earthquakes so effectively, would you believe your own eyes? If your answer is no, then join me as we explore the tomb of Cyrus the Great, a monument that appears surprisingly simple at first glance but has become one of the world's most fascinating archaeological sites. It may also answer that very question. Located in the ancient plain of Pasargadae in present-day Iran, the tomb was built around the 6th century BC, following the death of Cyrus the Great around 530 BC. As you may already know, Cyrus was the founder of the Achaemenid Persian Empire, one of the most powerful empires of the ancient world. During his reign, from 559 BC to 530 BC, the Persian Empire expanded from the shores of the Mediterranean Sea all the way to the Indus River, creating a vast realm that stretched across numerous civilizations. Yet despite possessing nearly absolute power, Cyrus's final resting place was anything but extravagant. Unlike the massive pyramids or the gold-covered royal tombs of many other rulers, his tomb is relatively modest in size and remarkably simple in design. Ironically, it is this very simplicity that conceals a secret that continues to astonish archaeologists and structural engineers today. Viewed from the outside, the tomb resembles a rectangular stone chamber measuring about 20 feet long and 16 feet wide. A small doorway leads into the burial chamber, while the roof is built in a triangular, gabled shape. The entire chamber rests upon a massive 6-tiered stepstone platform resembling a pyramid. Every section was assembled from enormous stone blocks, cut and fitted together with extraordinary precision. To the naked eye, it appears to be nothing more than a carefully built stone monument, but its greatest secret lies beneath the ground. According to experts, the tomb of Cyrus was constructed using a principle that today is known as base isolation engineering. Even more astonishing, it is considered one of the oldest earthquake-resistant structures ever built. In modern engineering, Base isolation works by separating a building's foundation from its upper structure, reducing the amount of seismic energy transferred during an earthquake. Remarkably, the ancient Persians appear to have applied a very similar principle more than 2,500 years ago. To create this unique foundation, they stacked multiple layers of limestone. The lowest layer was bonded together using a mortar mixture made from lime combined with ash or sand, then carefully polished to create a stable surface. The stone layer above, however, was not permanently fixed to the layer beneath it. Instead, the massive stone blocks were connected with metal clamps, while still allowing a limited amount of movement whenever the ground shook. Isn't that fascinating? That small amount of movement is exactly what allows the structure to absorb seismic forces. When an earthquake occurs, the stone layers can slide slightly against one another instead of transferring the full force directly into the tomb itself. As a result, much of the earthquake's energy is dispersed, significantly reducing the risk of cracks or collapse. That is why, despite the passage of centuries and the countless earthquakes that have struck the land of Iran, the tomb of Cyrus the Great remains standing today in an almost perfectly preserved condition. More than simply serving as the burial place of one of history's greatest rulers, the monument stands as lasting proof of the extraordinary engineering skills of the ancient Persians. 28,000-year-old pyramid in Indonesia could rewrite human history. If someone told you that deep within the dense jungles of Indonesia lies a massive structure believed to be far older than many of the civilizations we have ever known, would you believe them? Even more astonishing is the fact that for centuries, this structure was mistaken for nothing more than a tree-covered hill. It wasn't until modern surveying technology began peering beneath the surface that what lay hidden underground left archaeologists completely stunned. Since then, many experts have come to believe that this site may conceal one of the greatest mysteries in human history. Sounds impossible, doesn't it? Then let me take you to Indonesia, where a discovery exactly like this has actually taken place in recent years. The story begins at Gunung Padang in Indonesia, an archaeological site that has been known since the early 19th century. However, it wasn't until recent years, especially after scientists presented their research findings at the annual meeting of the American Geophysical Union, AGU, that the site truly became the focus of worldwide scientific attention. According to the archaeological team, beneath the thick layers of soil and dense vegetation lies not just a natural hill, as people had long believed, but a massive man-made structure whose shape resembles a pyramid. What's particularly fascinating is that the structure is almost impossible to recognize with the naked eye. Covered by vegetation for an incredibly long time, it appeared to be nothing more than an ordinary hill. Indonesian geologist Andang Bakhtiar even stated that the structure resembles a pyramid that has been hidden by nature for thousands of years. As a result, it wasn't until modern technology was applied that the secrets buried beneath the ground gradually began to emerge. What intrigued scientists even more was that this structure bears little resemblance to the famous pyramids built by the Maya or the ancient Egyptians. According to scientist Danny Hilman Natawijaja of the Indonesian Institute of Sciences, Maya pyramids typically feature highly symmetrical designs. In contrast, the structure at Gunung Padang has an elongated shape with a completely different architectural layout. He believes it is most likely not a pyramid in the traditional sense, but rather an ancient temple built in a unique architectural style unlike anything humanity has ever documented. To test this hypothesis, archaeologists employed a wide range of advanced surveying technologies. They used ground-penetrating radar, X-ray tomography, two-dimensional and three-dimensional imaging, geological core drilling, and conducted numerous excavations across the site. The results revealed that the entire complex is enormous, covering approximately 37 acres. Based on geological analysis, researchers determined that the uppermost architectural layer dates back roughly 3,000 to 3,500 years. But that wasn't the biggest surprise. At a depth of about 10 feet, the research team discovered another layer of stone columns believed to date back 7,500 to 8,300 years. When they excavated even deeper, about 49 feet below the surface, they uncovered yet another architectural layer estimated to be around 9,000 years old. However, the discovery that has generated the greatest controversy worldwide lies even deeper. Researchers identified traces that may date back as far as 28,000 years, along with several underground cavities and chambers. If these findings are fully verified in the future, they could dramatically reshape many existing theories about when humans first began constructing large-scale monuments. According to our current understanding, such an age would make the site far older than many of history's most famous civilizations. Even more fascinating is the fact that while scientists continue analyzing every aspect of the site, local residents have never stopped regarding Gunung Padang as a sacred place. To this day, they visit the site to pray, meditate, and perform traditional ceremonies passed down through generations. Could it be that they have unknowingly preserved an ancient heritage for thousands of years without fully understanding its true significance? Or is there another mystery hidden beneath the surface that even today's experts have yet to unravel? What do you think? Is Gunung Padang truly a mysterious ancient temple? Or could it be evidence of a civilization that disappeared long before recorded history began? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think. The 9 mysterious scratches on Bruce Lee's coffin. More than half a century later, no one has been able to explain them. Life is truly unpredictable. If people say this world is only a temporary place, they may not be exaggerating at all. Think about it. Some people leave this world without a chance to say goodbye, and before long, few remember who they were. Yet others, even after being gone for more than half a century, continue to be remembered by millions with admiration, respect, and a sense of mystery that has never been fully resolved. Few people embody that better than the legendary martial artist whose name is familiar to anyone interested in Chinese history or martial arts films. Yes, we're talking about Bruce Lee. Although his life was tragically short, his influence forever changed the global film industry. When people think of Bruce Lee, what continues to haunt them is not only his extraordinary career, but also his sudden death at the age of 32, along with the series of strange events that followed. Perhaps the most puzzling of them all were the 9 mysterious scratches that appeared on the lid of his coffin on the day he was laid to rest. So, were those scratches merely an incredible coincidence? Or is there still something about this story that has never been revealed? Let's go back to the beginning and examine what actually happened. To understand this mystery, we first need to know who Bruce Lee was. His birth name was Lee Jun-fan, and he was born at around 7 a.m. on November 27, 1940. According to the traditional Chinese calendar, he was born during the Year of the Dragon and the Hour of the Dragon, leading many people to say that he possessed the powerful spirit symbolized by the dragon in Chinese culture from the moment he was born. And in many ways, that seemed true. Throughout his life, Bruce Lee rarely stopped pushing himself forward. From a young actor, he gradually elevated Chinese martial arts films to an entirely new level while opening the doors of Hollywood to Asian actors. However, just as his career was reaching its peak, with several major film projects in development, tragedy struck. On July 20, 1973, in Hong Kong, Bruce Lee suddenly passed away at just 32 years old. The autopsy concluded that he had suffered cerebral edema, a severe swelling of the brain. After extensive discussion, doctors officially ruled his death an accidental fatality. Even so, that conclusion failed to erase the doubts held by fans, martial artists, and members of the film industry. The very next day, July 21, 1973, newspapers across Hong Kong widely reported the death of the martial arts superstar. Initial reports stated that Bruce Lee had collapsed and was rushed to Queen Elizabeth Hospital, where he could not be revived. At that time, the exact cause of his death had not yet been determined. As more information emerged, however, the story became increasingly complicated. At first, family members and close friends claimed that Bruce Lee had died at home with his wife by his side. Later, however, several Hong Kong newspapers reported that before collapsing, he had been at the home of actress Betty Ting-pei, a well-known actress of that era. From there, investigators began piecing together the events of Bruce Lee's final day. According to publicly available accounts, at around 1 p.m. on July 20th, Bruce Lee's wife left the house while he remained at home. At approximately 2 p.m., film producer Raymond Chow arrived to discuss the script for Game of Death. After their meeting, around 4 p.m., the two men went together to Betty Ting-pei's home, where she was also involved in the project, to continue discussing the film. Everything appeared perfectly normal until about 7 p.m., when Bruce Lee complained of a headache. Betty Ting-pei gave him a painkiller that she herself commonly used. After taking the medication, Bruce Lee went into a bedroom to rest and soon fell asleep. At around 8 p.m., Raymond Chow left to attend to other business. About half an hour later, Betty Ting-pei checked on Bruce Lee and found him sleeping deeply, so she chose not to wake him. By 9 p.m., nothing had changed. At approximately 9:45 p.m., Raymond Chow returned. Together, they repeatedly tried to wake Bruce Lee, but he showed no response. They immediately called for a doctor. Shortly after 10 p.m., the doctor determined that Bruce Lee had fallen into a deep coma and he was rushed to the hospital. Sadly, despite every effort, doctors were unable to save him. From that moment on, countless theories began to emerge. Some believed he had been targeted by organized crime. Others suspected fierce competition within the film industry. Still others pointed to personal conflicts, martial arts rivalries, feng shui, or even mysterious curses. Some rumors even attempted to link his death to actress Betty Ting-pei. However, to this day, none of these theories has ever been supported by credible evidence. The official conclusion remains that Bruce Lee died from cerebral edema in what was ruled an accidental death. Over the years, some people have also tried to explain his fate through traditional physiognomy, but these interpretations are simply folk beliefs and have no scientific basis. Just when it seemed that all the mysteries would end after his funeral, another strange detail captured public attention. Following Bruce Lee's death, his first funeral service was held at Guangbin Funeral Home in Kowloon, Hong Kong. According to tradition, his body was originally intended to be buried alongside many personal mementos. However, his wife, Linda Lee, decided instead to bring her husband back to Seattle, Washington, so that his family could more easily care for his gravesite. Then, on July 28, 1973, during the funeral service in Seattle, many attendees noticed something astonishing. 9 mysterious scratches had appeared across the lid of Bruce Lee's coffin. What made the discovery even more puzzling was that the entire transportation process had been carefully supervised. The security personnel accompanying the coffin also insisted that no incident had occurred that could have caused such marks. Yet the scratches remained, becoming one of the most enduring mysteries associated with Bruce Lee's death. Today, more than half a century later, the life and passing of this martial arts legend continue to fascinate people around the world, and many questions remain unanswered. So what do you think? Were the 9 scratches on Bruce Lee's coffin simply an extraordinary coincidence? Or do they conceal a story that history has yet to uncover? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Who knows? Perhaps your perspective could offer an entirely new way of looking at a mystery that has endured for more than 50 years. Wouldn't that be something truly remarkable? The coffin of the Ming Dynasty's laziest emperor was opened after more than 400 years. The discovery forced historians to rethink everything. When you hear about an emperor who never officially attended a single court session for 28 consecutive years, your first thought is probably that he must have been a lazy ruler, someone who cared only about his own comfort while neglecting the affairs of the state. But what if, more than 400 years later, archaeologists opened that emperor's coffin and discovered evidence that forced historians to reconsider a judgment that had stood for centuries? Was he truly an irresponsible ruler? Or was he simply a man carrying a burden that no one of his time could fully understand? To answer those questions, let's travel back in time and uncover the remarkable story of the Wanli Emperor, the man long known as the laziest emperor of China's Ming Dynasty. When people think of the Ming Dynasty, most immediately remember Emperor Hongwu, Zhu Yuanzhang, the founder of one of China's greatest imperial dynasties. However, after his death, many of his successors struggled to preserve that glory, and signs of decline gradually began to appear throughout the empire. Among all the Ming emperors, the Wanli Emperor stands out more than most. Not only was he the dynasty's longest-reigning emperor, spending 48 years on the throne, but he also became the central figure in one of the most debated mysteries in Chinese history. Wanli became emperor at just 10 years old. At an age when most children were still playing without a care in the world, he was already carrying the fate of a vast empire on his shoulders. According to historical records, during the early years of his reign, Wanli was an exceptionally diligent ruler. Every day he attended court, studied state affairs, reviewed memorials submitted by officials, and personally handled many important government matters. Many ministers of the time regarded the young emperor as responsible, hard-working, and full of promise. Yet midway through his reign, something changed, and no one could fully explain why. Wanli virtually disappeared from court. What makes the story astonishing is that this absence did not last for a few months or even a few years. It continued for 28 straight years. To many people, such behavior was unprecedented in imperial Chinese history. From that point forward, he became known as the Lazy Emperor. The mystery deepened because despite rarely appearing before his officials, the imperial government continued to function, the country remained relatively stable, and several military campaigns ended in victory. As a result, numerous theories emerged. Some believed Wanli had become deeply frustrated by the endless factionalism and political infighting among government officials and deliberately chose to avoid them. Other historical sources suggest that although he no longer attended court in person, he continued to review official memorials and govern the empire from behind the scenes. However, these remain interpretations rather than proven facts, because Wanli himself never publicly explained the true reason for his absence. Whenever officials submitted petitions urging him to return to court, the emperor simply gave the same brief reply: his health was poor. At the time, however, very few people believed him. To many, it was merely an excuse used to justify the laziness of an emperor who seemed to have abandoned his responsibilities. It wasn't until 1955, more than 400 years after Wanli's death, that an archaeological excavation at Dingling, part of the Ming Tombs complex in Beijing, China, offered an entirely new perspective. The excavation was carried out by a team of archaeologists and historians, including the renowned scholar Guo Moruo. The tomb was later converted into an underground museum for research and public exhibitions. Although Dingling is not the largest imperial tomb of the Ming dynasty, it is one of the most solidly built and structurally complex. Archaeologists spent more than a year locating its main entrance. When they finally reached the underground chambers, they uncovered more than 3,000 burial artifacts, including jewels, precious jade, silk, and countless objects of immense historical value. Yet the most significant discovery lay inside the emperor's coffin. After carefully studying and reconstructing Wanli's skeletal remains, experts noticed that his legs were not symmetrical. His right leg was slightly longer than his left, and the condition of his bones suggested that he may have suffered from a disorder involving muscle atrophy or a deformity affecting his lower limbs. Such a condition would likely have made walking, and even sitting for extended periods, extremely painful and difficult. Many researchers believe this physical condition may have been one of the reasons he avoided appearing at official court sessions. However, this remains an interpretation based on archaeological evidence and modern scientific analysis, rather than a definitive conclusion. Even so, if this hypothesis proves correct, then the image of Wanli as a lazy emperor for hundreds of years deserves to be viewed far more fairly. Perhaps he rarely appeared before his ministers, yet continued governing the empire quietly despite serious physical limitations. As you can see, history often records only what people were able to observe. The silent suffering someone endured can easily be buried by time. Only after the emperor's coffin was opened more than 4 centuries later did future generations finally gain the opportunity to piece together the missing parts of the story. So after hearing all of this, do you think the title of the laziest emperor in history still truly belongs to the Wanli emperor? Personally, I don't think it does. Because if he had truly been nothing more than a lazy ruler, how could he have maintained the stability of an entire dynasty for such a long period of time? 135-million-year-old dinosaur fossil, one of the most complete ever found in Europe. Can you believe that after lying buried beneath the earth for more than 135 million years, a dinosaur skeleton could remain so remarkably intact that it stunned the entire paleontological community? If not, then join me on a journey to Kelheim, in the German state of Bavaria. It was here about 2 years ago that researchers discovered an extraordinary dinosaur fossil lying along a riverbank. You know, the moment the first bones began to emerge from the ground, experts immediately sensed that this was no ordinary discovery. However, instead of announcing the find to the world right away, the research team chose to keep it secret for quite some time. The reason was simple. They feared that if news of the discovery leaked too early, fossil hunters from around the world would rush to the site, potentially disrupting the excavation and damaging the remains that were still buried underground. Only after the excavation and careful scientific study had been completed was the fossil finally revealed to the public. Just as the researchers had expected, It immediately became the center of attention within the international scientific community. The research team gave the dinosaur the affectionate nickname Ott. That simple name quickly appeared in scientific journals because this was not only an exceptionally rare fossil, but also one of the best preserved dinosaur specimens ever discovered in Europe. What amazed scientists the most was the extraordinary level of preservation. According to the research team, Ott retains approximately 98% of its skeletal structure, an almost unprecedented level of completeness for a carnivorous dinosaur fossil. Previously, most known skeletons of predatory dinosaurs preserved only about 70% to 80% of their original structure at best. Finding a specimen this complete has given scientists an exceptionally rare opportunity to study in remarkable detail the anatomy of one of the creatures that ruled Earth millions of years ago. According to Oliver Rauhut, curator of the paleontology collection in Bavaria, this is an extraordinary discovery. Not only is the skeleton more complete than the vast majority of previously known specimens, but at the time of its announcement, it was also considered one of the most complete dinosaur fossils ever found in Europe. Detailed analysis revealed that Ott shares many characteristics with the theropods, the group of two-legged carnivorous dinosaurs that also includes the famous Tyrannosaurus rex. However, researchers have not yet been able to determine exactly which species Ott belongs to. That means this remarkable fossil still holds many mysteries waiting to be solved. But the surprises didn't end there. Scientists also discovered that Ott was not an adult. Instead, researchers believe the dinosaur was only about 1 year old when it died during the Jurassic period. Its body measured only about 28 inches in length, indicating that it was still a juvenile. Ironically, because it died at such a young age, many delicate anatomical features were preserved far more clearly than they usually are in adult specimens, allowing scientists to examine details that are often lost over time. Most exciting of all, researchers found traces of both feathers and skin preserved alongside Ott's skeleton. This discovery generated tremendous excitement throughout the paleontological community. For many years, scientists have searched for additional evidence supporting the evolutionary connection between dinosaurs and modern birds. The preserved feather impressions on Ott could therefore provide valuable new information that helps explain the evolutionary process spanning tens of millions of years. Perhaps because of its extraordinary scientific importance, the German government officially declared Ott a national cultural asset immediately after the research was completed. This means the fossil cannot be bought, sold, or exported from Germany under any circumstances. In the future, Ott will be preserved and displayed in a museum in Germany, where it will continue supporting scientific research while giving the public the opportunity to see one of Europe's greatest paleontological treasures with their own eyes. As you can see, a single fossil that remained hidden beneath the Earth for 135 million years is enough to raise countless new questions about the evolutionary history of our planet. So, what would you think if I told you that beneath the rocks and soil we walk across every day, countless ancient creatures may still be waiting to be discovered? China's most luxurious landowner, tomb. Even the coffin nails were made of solid gold. While preparing to build an ordinary public works project, workers accidentally uncovered a tomb that, at first glance, appeared completely unremarkable. There was no stone monument, no grand entrance, and no visible sign that it belonged to someone of high status. In fact, even the archaeologists initially believed it was nothing more than an ordinary civilian burial with little archaeological significance. But then, one small detail on the decaying coffin left everyone speechless. The nails holding the coffin lid in place were made entirely of solid gold. Think about it. Could an ordinary person really afford to use gold just to fasten a coffin? So who was the true owner of this extraordinarily lavish tomb? If you don't have an answer yet, let's travel back to 2014 to Xinpu County, Guizhou Province, China. At the time, local authorities were preparing to construct a reservoir. As required by law, archaeologists conducted a preliminary excavation before construction began. During their survey beneath a resident's home, the team unexpectedly discovered an ancient underground tomb that had remained buried for centuries. Initial observations revealed that the tomb occupied what was considered an ideal location. It faced a river in front and was backed by mountains behind, perfectly matching the traditional feng shui principle of leaning against the mountains while facing the water, a concept highly valued in Eastern culture. This suggested that whoever built the tomb had carefully chosen the burial site. However, the tomb itself appeared surprisingly simple. The burial chamber was constructed entirely from packed earth, with no entrance gate, no stone walls, and none of the elaborate architecture commonly found in royal mausoleums. Based on their initial assessment, the archaeological team concluded that it was probably an ordinary civilian tomb and was unlikely to contain anything of exceptional historical importance. But archaeology has a way of defying expectations. As the excavation continued, researchers uncovered a wooden coffin that had badly deteriorated over time. At first, nothing about it seemed unusual. Then, after carefully removing the dirt covering its surface, the experts noticed something that immediately changed everything. The nails securing the coffin were not made of iron or bronze, as was customary. Every single one of them had been crafted from pure gold. At that moment, the entire archaeological team realized that their original assessment had almost certainly been wrong. After all, in imperial China, even wealthy families rarely used gold for something as hidden and seemingly insignificant as coffin nails. Using gold for such a purpose strongly suggested that the tomb's owner possessed extraordinary wealth and social status. Filled with both curiosity and anticipation, the researchers carefully lifted the coffin lid. What they found inside left everyone in stunned silence. The coffin had been divided into two separate compartments, containing the remains of a man and a woman. Surrounding them were countless burial objects made from pure gold. Golden spoons, plates, vases, and many other exquisitely crafted items had been placed beside the deceased. Among the most remarkable discoveries was a pair of gold cups decorated with beautifully carved dragons, displaying an exceptional level of craftsmanship. The surprises didn't end there. The tomb also contained numerous gold ingots and valuable jade artifacts buried alongside the couple. To the archaeologists standing there, it looked less like a tomb and more like a hidden treasure that had remained undisturbed for centuries before finally being awakened. Unfortunately, nowhere inside the tomb was there a stone inscription or written record identifying those who had been buried there. Determining the occupants' identities therefore became an enormous challenge. After an exhaustive search, however, the researchers discovered a short inscription engraved on the base of a silver candlestick. That tiny detail became the crucial clue that ultimately led them toward identifying the tomb's owners. Based on the inscription and comparisons with historical records, researchers believe the woman may have been Madame Tian, while the man was most likely Yang Jia, a prominent landowner who lived during China's Song dynasty. According to historical records cited in the research, Yang Jia assisted the imperial court during its military campaigns against the Mongol forces. He was later appointed to govern the region corresponding to present-day Xinpu County, Guizhou Province. If this identification is correct, then the extraordinary wealth and lavish nature of the tomb can largely be explained by the position and immense fortune he possessed during his lifetime. As you can see, history's greatest secrets are not always hidden inside magnificent palaces or colossal royal tombs. Sometimes they lie quietly beneath the floor of an ordinary home, waiting for someone to uncover them by chance. That's what makes archaeology so fascinating, isn't it? 54. Ancient jar burials beneath the waters of Vietnam's Nuoc Trong Reservoir. My friends, what would you think if someone told you that beneath the calm waters of a reservoir in central Vietnam lies an entire ancient cemetery dating back thousands of years? Even more astonishing is the fact that these tombs were not buried just a few hundred years ago. They have remained hidden since the time when ancient communities lived on this land more than 3,000 years ago. Every burial jar, every funerary object, and every bead of jewelry discovered there is like a doorway that takes us back through time to meet the people who once lived, worked, and helped build one of the most remarkable ancient cultures in Vietnam. It sounds almost unbelievable, doesn't it? Even some of the most experienced archaeologists found it difficult to believe at first. But that's the fascinating thing about history. It always has a way of surprising us. And the story of Nuoc Trong Reservoir, located in Son Ha District, Quang Ngai Province, within Vietnam's Tang River Basin, is a perfect example. Nuoc Trong is one of the largest irrigation reservoirs in central Vietnam. Construction on the project began in 2007 under the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. During the land clearing process for the reservoir, cultural authorities and archaeologists unexpectedly uncovered numerous ancient remains buried deep within the Tang River Valley, an area that would later become submerged beneath the reservoir. At first, scattered discoveries of stone tools, bronze objects, iron artifacts, glass, and pottery attracted the attention of researchers. However, as excavations continued, archaeologists realized that the site was much more than an ancient settlement. It was also an exceptionally important burial complex. More than 10 years ago, a total of 54 ancient tombs were discovered and excavated. To preserve them in their original condition, each tomb was carefully encased in plaster, placed inside specially designed wooden crates, and transported to the Quang Ngai General Museum for safekeeping. After years of research, specialists began the painstaking work of uncovering, restoring, and conserving these jar burials between 2021 and 2022. It was an incredibly meticulous process. Every layer of soil adhering to the artifacts was carefully removed. Broken pottery fragments were painstakingly reassembled and restored, while researchers determined the age and structural characteristics of each individual burial. On August 25th, the Quang Ngai Department of Culture, Sports and Tourism officially concluded the restoration and research project, presenting many of its most important findings to the public. According to Associate Professor Dr. Nguyen Kok Su of the Vietnam Institute of Archaeology, the burials belong to communities associated with the Pre-Sa Huyen and Sa Huyen cultures. This discovery is especially significant because Nuoc Trong Reservoir lies approximately 62 miles west of An Khe Lagoon in Duc Pho Town, where the first Sa Huyen archaeological sites were discovered in 1909. Although the two locations are separated by a considerable distance, the jar burials found at Nuoc Trong share many characteristics with other well-known Sa Huyen sites. One aspect that particularly fascinated archaeologists was the remarkable diversity of the burial practices. According to Dr. Doan Ngoc Khoi, Deputy Director of the Quang Ngai General Museum, 19 of the restored tombs are coffin-shaped jar burials. These jars were used to hold the cremated remains of the deceased. Inside them, archaeologists found numerous grave goods, including stone tools, jewelry, and ceramic vessels. Researchers also uncovered 6 earth graves, in which the deceased were buried directly in the ground and surrounded by layers of pottery. Looking closely at these ancient jars, you can see that the people who created them cared about much more than simply burying their dead. They also expressed a remarkable sense of artistry. Archaeologists believe the ancient inhabitants used natural tubular materials to create circular decorative patterns on the surfaces of the jars. These designs were likely more than simple decoration. They may have held spiritual significance or reflected the social status of the individual buried within. The jars themselves come in an impressive variety of shapes. Some are spherical, while others are cylindrical, egg-shaped, or resemble large ceremonial vases. Some have no lids at all, while others are covered with dome-shaped, basin-shaped, or truncated cone-shaped lids. Each design may reflect a different belief about the afterlife held by the ancient Sa Huyen people. In addition to the jar burials, archaeologists recovered a remarkable collection of valuable artifacts. Stone axes, grinding slabs, grain pestles, pounding stones, and numerous other tools provide insight into the daily lives of these ancient communities. Researchers also discovered jewelry made from agate, a semi-precious variety of quartz that humans have been using since thousands of years BC. These discoveries demonstrate that the Sa Huyen people not only possessed advanced craftsmanship, but also enjoyed a rich spiritual life and a sophisticated sense of aesthetics. Dear friends, every ancient tomb, every set of human remains, every fossil, and every artifact that is discovered serves as a doorway into the past. Yet each one also leaves behind countless questions that humanity has still not been able to answer completely. Perhaps that is exactly what makes archaeology one of the most fascinating fields in the world. So, which discovery from today's video impressed you the most? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like, subscribe to Ancient History, and turn on notifications so you can join us on many more incredible journeys into the mysteries of the past. For now, thank you so much for watching. Goodbye, and we'll see you in the next video.